Chapter 187. Sword Qi. Mu Baifei and the other two frowned. Qin Wentian's entire body was enveloped by boundless sword light, transforming into numerous sharp astral swords that emitted a whistling sound, exuding a bone-piercing sharpness. Each and every one of the astral swords exuded an indomitable sharpness, advancing forward with indomitable will. What a pleasant surprise! The crowd stared at Qin Wentian in bewilderment. This fellow wasn't someone from a transcendent power, yet his combat prowess was actually so strong. Not only that, Qin Wentian's aura hadn't stopped rising. Numerous blood-colored runes danced about, enveloping the surface of his sword. The sword light was as red as blood, exuding a demonic aura. And now, Qin Wentian's aura was akin to that of the blood sword sovereign. The demonic aura he exuded grew stronger and stronger. "Since you wish to die, I shall grant you your wish." Qin Wentian's voice resounded in the air, incomparably tyrannical. He wanted the swallow swordsman to die. Boom! Finally, as Mu Baifei and the other two swallow swordsmen advanced, Qin Wentian took a step forward. With this step, the swords roared, and the countless swords of stars gathered together, transforming into waves of swords, sword vortexes that wanted to devour everything. Mu Baifei's countenance finally changed as he roared in rage, "Sword keening!" As the sound of his voice faded, the boundless sword light from the three swallow swordsmen also converged together. The swords in their hands clashed together as terrifying hums rang out, trembling unceasingly. The sword intent in the air converged together, transforming into the hums of their swords. It was as though their swords were stacking together, as though they had a life of their own. The swallow swordsmen were actually forced to use a combination attack when facing Qin Wentian's attack. Die! The sword-type divine energy around Qin Wentian howled as it gushed forth, forming a terrifying sword vortex that swallowed everything in its path. Thousands of swords protected him, transforming into the most powerful sword attack he could muster, causing the spectators to tremble in fear. Leaving aside the fact that the yuanfus of Qin Wentian's yuanfu were all sealed, even if they were outside, such an attack was sufficient to kill yuanfu experts. Kill! Mu Baifei and the other two roared in unison, as the humming of their swords shook the heavens, transforming into a gigantic dragon made of swords, roaring as it rushed out. This was an extremely tyrannical innate technique, yet with just their individual swords alone, they were unable to unleash the might of the humming of the swords. Only when the three of them merged as one, using their hearts and minds as one, could they unleash such a powerful attack. From this, one could see how much pressure Qin Wentian was exerting on them. The surrounding people were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. Thousands of protector swords collided with the sword vortex and the sword dragon. The space released a dazzling brilliance, and the sound of swords shook the eardrums of the crowd. Endless sword qi tore through the air, and the surrounding people quickly retreated far away. On Qin Wentian's side, a cloud of dust rose up as the sword qi tore through the earth. Mu Baifei and the other two retreated with explosive speed, their white robes torn into shreds as blood stained their robes. At this moment, their countenances were incomparably heavy as they stared at the tyrannical Qin Wentian in front of them. Such a powerful combination of swords, yet they were still unable to suppress Qin Wentian's attack. Little did they know that at this moment, Qin Wentian was similarly taken aback. He knew in his heart how powerful this strike of his was. The incomparably vast amount of sword-type divine energy transformed into terrifying divine inscriptions, in addition to his tyrannical physique, as well as the blood-colored runic inscriptions. This was an attack he had prepared specifically for yuanfu cultivators, yet it still failed to kill Mu Baifei and the other two. This strike caused Qin Wentian to expend a great deal of energy. Swallowing another stellar fruit, Qin Wentian stared at Mu Baifei. The countenances of the three swallow swordsmen were unprecedentedly heavy. They knew that this time around, they wanted to bully Qin Wentian into taking out the stellar fruits, yet they had kicked an iron board instead. They were swallow swordsmen from the Yen continent, and were extremely confident in their own strength. Yet a nameless nobody had actually suppressed the three of them single-handedly. Not far away, the countenances of Chen Mingyu and the other two were extremely fascinating. Qian Mingyu's countenance was filled with astonishment. So it turned out that he was actually this strong? What was laughable was that in her heart, she had thought that Qin Wenyin was following them because he wanted to seek protection. What was even more laughable was that after Qin Wenyin obtained the stellar fruits, he wanted to split it equally with them. However, her subordinates had suggested that the four of them should be the ones to split it. This was because Qin Wenyin was merely someone they wanted to protect, a follower of theirs. Although Qian Mingyu eventually agreed to split the fruits equally, she knew that in her heart, she still harbored such thoughts. Such thoughts caused her to feel a burning sensation on her face. After all, it was Qin Wenyin who suggested that they split the fruits equally. If Qin Wenyin wanted to hog the fruits for himself, what could they do? Mu Baifei and the other two had used their absolute strength to suppress the four of them, and even killed one of them. But when Mu Baifei and the other two fought against Qin Wenyin, they were all inferior. The female cultivator beside Qian Mingyu had been speaking rudely to Qin Wenyin not long ago. Now that she witnessed Qin Wentian's strength, her countenance alternated between shades of green and white. However, Qin Wenyin didn't care about what they were thinking. At this moment, he didn't continue his attacks, but was staring at Mu Baifei and the other two. That earlier strike had consumed a great deal of his energy. He could still unleash another strike, but if he did so, it would be extremely difficult for him to deal with any troubles he might encounter in the future. On the other side of the battlefield, Missouri Qingqing wasn't at a disadvantage against Shiki. This was also the reason why Qin Wenyin didn't act immediately. Those from the Mystic Moon sect held the advantage against those from the Beast King Hall. It wasn't because the overall strength of the Mystic Moon sect was superior, but rather, it was because the leader of the Mystic Moon sect, the female cultivator with a veil over her face, was extremely powerful. Her movements were akin to shadows, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Sometimes, it even felt as though she didn't exist. But the instant she appeared, the long spear of darkness in her hands would pierce through the hearts of those who fought against her. This caused many to feel fear in their hearts. The Mystic Moon sect was a transcendent power in the 9 continents, and their innate techniques were all extremely sinister and bizarre. Very few people were willing to antagonize them. It was said that the Mystic Moon sect's training for their disciples was extremely cruel. They used a method of torture to train their disciples, turning them into sharp spears in the darkness, capable of killing without leaving a trace. But at this moment, Yao Sheng took a step forward. The experts from the Sky Demon sect were stirred up. Yao Sheng and Shiki had formed an alliance, yet when the Beast King Hall was at a disadvantage, they didn't help. Instead, they waited until so many of the Beast King Hall's members had died before they acted. Such a method was truly worth pondering. Evidently, they didn't want the Beast King Hall to be at their peak strength, yet they didn't want their allies to perish. Kill! Yao Sheng coldly stated, his gaze sweeping towards the battlefield between Qin Wenyin and the Swallow Swordsman. It would be best if both sides suffered heavy injuries. That would be the best ending. Qin Wenyin furrowed his brows. He wasn't sure why the Mystic Moon sect wanted to help, but it was clear that he didn't want the Mystic Moon sect to be in danger. Ouyang Guangxing, help the Mystic Moon sect and I'll owe you a favor. How about it? Qin Wenyin continued staring at the Swallow Swordsman, while Ouyang Guangxing stood not far behind him. He had his back to Ouyang Guangxing when he spoke. The Mystic Moon sect was being surrounded, he had to do something. Ouyang Guangxing didn't expect that Qin Wenyin would speak to him. His eyes flickered with contemplation before he smiled. Fine, there's no need for you to owe me a favor. Just treat it as me Ouyang making a friend. After speaking, Ouyang Guangxing stepped out. Abruptly, terrifying flames erupted from his body as a terrifying heat gushed forth from him. Ouyang Guangxing's entire body was bathed in terrifying flames, and with a single punch, the person in front of him was instantly engulfed in flames. With a deafening boom, the person in front of him was instantly crushed to death. Ouyang Guangxing is truly arrogant. How strong. However, this fellow is truly someone who does as he pleases. He didn't even know Qin Wenyin, yet he acted just because of a single sentence from Qin Wenyin. This undoubtedly offended the Beast King Hall and the Sky Demon sect. The hearts of many mused. However, they had also heard of Ouyang Guangxing's personality. When had this fellow ever cared about the opinions of others? If he cared about the opinions of others, he wouldn't have chosen to cultivate when the other members of the same generation had already reached the arterial circulation realm. One could only imagine how much disdain Ouyang Guangxing had endured back then. However, he didn't care, and persisted until he was 16 years old, when he could condense an astral soul from the fourth heavenly layer, shocking the world with a single feat. This kind of indifference, in and of itself, was a kind of arrogance. It was enough for him to know what he wanted to do. The opinions of others had nothing to do with him. Earlier, Ouyang Guangxing had personally witnessed Qin Wentian's strength. He had single-handedly fought against Mu Baifei and the other two swallow swordsmen. With such combat prowess, he was still willing to split the stellar fruits equally with those from the stellar pavilion. From this, one could see that there was no need to doubt Qin Wentian's character. He wasn't a selfish person, and more importantly, he had personally witnessed Qin Wentian subduing the Yellow Springs Monument. The legend of the Yellow Springs Monument and the Yellow Springs ancient path had already circulated around the 9 continents for thousands of years. When one encountered the Yellow Springs on the road, repent and be saved. However, there had never been anyone who could subdue the Yellow Springs Monument. Qin Wentian was the first to do so. Hence, when Qin Wentian spoke, Ouyang Guangxing only took a moment to consider before agreeing. This was a friend they could befriend. Many thanks. Qin Wentian could feel Ouyang Guangxing's forthrightness. Naturally, he was willing to befriend such a person. As such, the various transcendent powers had all participated in this battle. Not only that, it was all because of that unknown character, Qin Wentian. Sadly, those from the Stellar Pavilion didn't even have the qualifications to participate in this battle. Not only that, Jiang Ting and Ouyang Guangxing had yet to arrive. Finally, only Wang Xiao from the Wang clan of the War Continent remained. Many in the crowd glanced at Wang Xiao, only to see him calmly standing there, watching everything unfold in front of him. Nobody could tell what he was thinking, but according to what the crowd knew, Wang Xiao from the Wang clan was definitely one of the most terrifying characters here. The pressure he could bring forth was definitely no less than Ouyang Guangxing's. Now, he just didn't know if Wang Xiao would participate in this storm. But no matter what, the current Qin Wentian could finally focus on dealing with Mu Baifei and the other two swallow swordsmen. Chapter 188. Qin Wentian plucked out his ancient halberd. The stellar fruits were able to replenish astral energy at a rapid rate. Qin Wentian had already sensed this point. However, Mu Baifei and the rest didn't have any stellar fruits. After defeating Qian Mingyu and the other 4 from the Green Cloud Pavilion, they had to fight against Qin Wentian. Especially that combination of swordplay earlier, they had all expended a tremendous amount of astral energy. As they stared at Qin Wentian slowly walking towards them, traces of wariness could be seen in their eyes. Mu Baifei brandished his long sword once again. The pride of a swallow swordsman was not something that could be crushed. The other 2 beside him also brandished their swords. The sword intent exuded from them was extremely sharp, as the glow of their astral souls shone downwards, causing the power of their swords to increase by several notches. Bzz. Qin Wentian's silhouette transformed into a shadow as he violently slashed out with his ancient halberd towards Mu Baifei. The mountain splitter stance was ferocious, powerful, and capable of splitting a mountain apart. Not only that, this strike was also infused with sword-type divine yuan energy. As the leader of the 3 swallow swordsmen, Mu Baifei's combat prowess was also the strongest. He definitely lived up to his reputation. His long sword twirled in the air, as resplendent beams of light danced in the air, emitting a desolate killing intent. Boom! The powerful force of the collision forced Mu Baifei to retreat. However, the attacks of the other 2 instantly arrived. Their swords were as fast as lightning. Qin Wentian rotated his feet as he simultaneously blasted out with his falling mountain palms. His falling mountain palms were as heavy as a mountain, containing boundless might, blocking the sword light from the left. At the same time, as the sword light from the right pierced towards him, he abruptly slammed his ancient halberd downwards. The ancient halberd transformed into a terrifying beam of light as it shot towards Mu Baifei. Puchi! Qin Wenyan opened his mouth as he spat out a beam of sword light towards the right, causing his opponent's attack to falter momentarily. Qin Wenyan's arterial pathways began to churn as a roaring sound echoed out. Kill! With a furious roar, Qin Wenyan's arm seemed to contain an incomparably terrifying power. He blasted out a terrifying Kuji seal, which was emitting a terrifying blood-red light. It transformed into a blood-red palm that was filled with destructive power. With a loud bang, his opponent's sword flew out of his hand. Qin Wenyan's speed was incomparably ferocious. He had long prepared for this attack. Executing the Garuda movement technique, he closed in on his opponent. The countenance of his opponent grew incredibly unsightly to behold as he hurriedly stabbed out with his finger, the tip of his finger imbued with a powerful sword intent. But in close combat, how tyrannical was Qin Wenyan? His demonic eyes stared at his opponent, causing his opponent to feel as though he was about to sink into an unreal dream. After that, a blood-colored palm smashed over, destroying his attack. Qin Wenyan stabbed out with his finger, and a sharp divine yuan sword imbued with blood-colored runes pierced into his opponent's head. Everything happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. However, Mu Baifei and the other opponent's swords slashed over, causing Qin Wenyan to feel an intense sense of danger. In an instant, Qin Wenyan adjusted his attack, and a terrifying amount of divine energy erupted forth, transforming into a resplendent sword that shot towards Mu Baifei. The threat Mu Baifei posed to him was even greater than before, but at the same time, the other opponent's sword arrived. Qin Wenyan's left palm trembled as he slapped out horizontally. A beam of blood-red light flashed, and a blood stain appeared on Qin Wenyan's palm. His opponent's sword was simply too sharp. Against such an opponent, the slightest bit of carelessness would result in death. Qin Wenyan hurriedly retreated. Mu Baifei and the other opponent knew that they had missed the best opportunity to kill Qin Wenyan. Glancing at the corpse of their comrade, their gazes grew heavy as they stared at Qin Wenyan, their killing intent growing increasingly intense. Qin Wenyan turned his head and glanced at Emo Qingqing. Shiki had completely gone berserk, transforming into a half-human, half-demonic beast as he frenziedly suppressed Emo Qingqing. Even with his status, he was actually unable to suppress Emo Qingqing, causing him to feel extremely embarrassed. However, there was no need to worry about the Mystic Moon Hall. Ouyang Guangxing's strength was indeed powerful, and in addition to the fact that the members of the Mystic Moon Hall were also extremely powerful, they weren't at a disadvantage against those from the Sky Demon Sect and Beast King Hall. As for those who weren't from the Transcendent Powers, they were more than happy to watch the commotion. They were already in a weaker position, and the frenzied battle of these Transcendent Powers was extremely beneficial to them. What a cold wind! At this moment, some of the spectators shivered as they felt the cold wind gusting against their bodies. Not only that, the intensity of the wind grew increasingly intense. Everyone frowned slightly. After that, they looked in a certain direction. It was the only crack in the mountain wall. The suction force from the crack that could accommodate several people was getting stronger and stronger. It was actually spreading outwards, and there was already a momentum of sand and gravel flying around. What's going on? The spectators turned their gazes over, and to their astonishment, they discovered that a terrifying gale of wind gusted over, gushing towards that crack. It was as though the crack in the mountain rampart wanted to devour everything. In just a short instant, the robes of the spectators fluttered in the wind. They felt as though they were about to be sucked into the crack, and this feeling grew increasingly intense. Everyone stopped fighting. Qin Wenyan was forced to take a step back by the gale of wind. Qin Wenyan steadied himself, but he couldn't even open his eyes. This wind was extremely bizarre. Under the influence of this gale of wind, there were people moving unceasingly. One of them dashed towards Qin Wenyan, causing Qin Wenyan to take a step back. Abruptly, that person turned around as a gigantic axe appeared in his hand, slashing down towards Qin Wenyan. If Qin Wenyan was struck by that attack, his body would definitely be split into two. Qin Wenyan instantly broke out in cold sweat. Right now, under the influence of this gale, it was basically impossible for him to move. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to evade the attack easily, and it was even more difficult for him to summon his strength to resist. Not only that, the power of that attack was extremely terrifying. This seemingly unremarkable figure was definitely an extremely tyrannical one. Clearly, this person was after the star fruits in his possession. Boom! Qin Wenyin abruptly relaxed his body, not resisting the gale of wind. His body directly drifted towards the direction of the mountain rampart, and as the gigantic axe slashed out, a terrifying axe light flashed. A piercing sound rang out as the robes on his chest were torn apart, as fresh blood spurted out. A long bloody wound appeared on his chest. With a thunderous boom, Qin Wenyan's body was slammed into the mountain rampart, as he felt intense pain all over his body. That gale of wind was simply too terrifying. Wenyin. Mo Qingqing's voice drifted over. She had personally witnessed that terrifying axe slash earlier, and was currently struggling to move towards Qin Wenyan's location. I'm fine. Qin Wenyan turned his head and smiled at Mo Qingqing. He could feel the power of his bloodline limit surging within him, as the bloody wound on his chest slowly healed. This caused Qin Wenyan's heart to tremble slightly. After which, the blood-colored runes in his body frenziedly surged towards the wound, and as expected, the speed at which the wound healed grew even faster. This caused Qin Wenyan to once again feel how powerful his bloodline limit was. Over here. Mo Qingqing stretched out her hand towards Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan leaned against the mountain rampart as he moved towards her. Pulling her dainty hand in his, he stated, "Qingqing, I'm afraid no one would be able to withstand this demonic wind. We can only go with the flow and enter that passageway." Mo Qingqing lightly nodded her head, as the two of them held each other's hands tightly. Let's go. Qin Wenyan didn't retrieve his ancient halberd, nor did he think about finding the expert who slashed at him earlier. At this moment, the most important thing was his safety. He cast a glance at the people within the windstorm, and noticed that there were quite a few who had launched sneak attacks. The people here were all extremely ruthless, and they wouldn't miss out on any opportunities. The two of them completely relaxed. Momentarily, that terrifying demonic wind instantly swept them into the crack in the mountain rampart, and after which, they felt as though they were soaring through the clouds. A thunderous sound rang out, and Qin Wenyan knew that he had slammed into the stone rampart beside him. He only felt his mind going blank, and that terrifying demonic wind was so strong that he couldn't even open his eyes. Astral energy circulated around his body, and the blood vessels in his body churned, protecting him. At the same time, Qin Wenyan pulled Mo Qingqing into his embrace, and hugged her tightly as they soared through the raging wind. Mo Qingqing's internal organs were trembling violently, but when she suddenly felt that warm embrace, she felt a sweetness in her heart. She also hugged Qin Wenyan tightly. Their bodies unceasingly slammed into the mountain rampart, and after a long time, Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing finally slammed heavily onto the ground. They rolled a few times on the ground, but their bodies were still tightly stuck together. Opening his eyes, Qin Wenyan stared at the pair of glowing eyes. A smile appeared on Qin Wenyan's face. They were still alive. Mo Qingqing also had a sweet smile on her face. The two of them sat up with great difficulty, feeling as though their bodies were about to fall apart. Surveying their surroundings, they discovered that they were currently in the midst of a violent tempest. However, very quickly, the eyes of the two of them froze as they stared ahead. The reason why they could still feel such a strong storm was because there was a cold wind that was as sharp as a blade blowing in front of them. In front of them, there was a terrifying storm. However, as their gazes penetrated through the tempest, they saw a magnificent scene. Numerous towering stone pillars seemed to be connected to the constellations in the sky, and astral light cascaded downwards, cascading into the astral pool that was enveloped by the stone pillars. That place was the celestial pool. As long as they passed through the tempest, they would be able to bathe in the celestial pool. At this moment, the crowd had already been blown over by the demonic tempest. When they climbed up, they similarly discovered the celestial pool on the other side of the tempest, only to see several people madly sprinting in that direction, stepping into the tempest. However, very quickly, they slowed their steps, as though they could feel how terrifying the tempest was. Step by step, more and more people stepped into the tempest. Finally, the person in the lead had already traversed a third of the tempest, yet his astral energy seemed to have been completely depleted. Following which, a rain of blood rained down, and the crowd could clearly see his body being torn apart by the tempest. Such a scene caused the hearts of many to pound, especially those who had already entered the tempest. Their hearts trembled, but they could only grit their teeth and continue forward. Scenes of blood and gore appeared, causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble unceasingly. Those who had entered the tempest had all died. Even the person who managed to traverse the furthest distance didn't even manage to traverse half of the tempest. Stellar fruits. The gazes of many abruptly shifted in the direction of Qin Wenyin and Mu Baifei. Other than Ouyang Guangxing, only Qin Wenyin and Mu Baifei possessed stellar fruits. Without sufficient astral energy to protect one's body, it was basically impossible to traverse that distance. The existence of the stellar fruits was precisely for the sake of passing through the tempest, allowing one to reach the celestial pool. Only to see the silhouettes of the crowd rapidly moving about, blocking the path of Qin Wendian, Mo Qingqing, and Mu Baifei, not allowing them to enter the tempest. In fact, even Ouyang Guangxing was blocked by the crowd. With regards to the stellar fruits, they had no choice but to take the risk. What made the hearts of the crowd tremble was that the first person to make a move was none other than Wang Xiao from the War Continent, and his target was none other than the swallow swordsman, Mu Baifei. Qin Wenyin glanced at the other swallow swordsman standing beside Mu Baifei. Of the 3 swallow swordsmen, he was the only one remaining. When he saw the icy glare of Qin Wenyin, a trace of fear finally appeared in his eyes. Chapter 189. At this moment, no one dared to casually step into the tempest. They were very clear that the moment they stepped in, they would have to expend their astral energy to resist the terrifying tempest. And by the time they discovered that their astral energy was insufficient to support them, it would already be too late for them to retreat. This was also the reason why the first batch of people had died in the tempest. Now, even if they wanted to probe further, they wouldn't enter the tempest. They would only casually take a few steps to sense the surroundings. However, the majority of them were thinking about the stellar fruits. Only by doing so would they be able to reach the other shore. However, at this moment, the swallow swordsman who was with Mu Baifei wasn't thinking about the stellar fruits. Rather, he was thinking about his own life. Seeing Qin Wendian walking towards him, the astral wind buffeted his face. He was truly afraid. The silhouette of the youth walking towards him gave him an unprecedented sense of pressure. Not long ago, the 3 of them had joined forces to deal with Qin Wendian, yet they were still unable to do anything to him. But now, he was the only one left. Busy. Qin Wendian released his movement technique, instantly appearing in front of the swallow swordsman. The divine energy in his arterial pathways seethed, and the blood-colored Kuji imprint emanated an aura of annihilation. The swallow swordsman's countenance paled as he raised his sword to defend. His sword flashed brilliantly, but in the face of the blood-colored palm imprint, it seemed to have lost its luster. With a thunderous boom, the swallow swordsman staggered backwards in the sand. After which, a gust of cold wind brushed past him, as he felt his entire body turn cold. After which, a resplendent beam of sword light flashed past, piercing through his throat. Tossing aside the divine weapon in his hand, he clutched his throat with both hands. Very quickly, his throat was dyed red with fresh blood. Despair could be seen in his eyes as he knelt weakly on the ground, his blood dripping onto the sand. Filled with fear and despair, the body of the arrogant swallow swordsman softly slumped to the ground. This caused the gazes of the spectators to be filled with trepidation as they stared at Qin Wenyin. Although he had the stellar fruits on him, it wouldn't be easy to obtain them. As Wang Xiao approached Mu Baifei, he immediately unleashed a terrifying barrage of attacks. His entire body was like a weapon, indestructible and indestructible. Numerous astral flying daggers manifested, transforming into a silvery glow as they shot towards Mu Baifei. Mu Baifei used his sword to defend, yet Wang Xiao's fists were as tough as steel. Occasionally, terrifying divine weapons would be unleashed, and in the midst of the battle, a golden hoop would suddenly appear, breaking apart everything in its path. At other times, there would be chains that were as sharp as blades, and the pressure was so great that Mu Baifei was forced to retreat continuously. Boom! Wang Xiao stepped right in front of Mu Baifei, both of his hands clad in silver armor. After deflecting Mu Baifei's sword, he slammed his fist into Mu Baifei's body, causing Mu Baifei to be sent flying backwards as he coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. "I'll give you the star fruits." Mu Baifei's face was pale as he spoke to Wang Xiao. Only then did Wang Xiao stop, as he walked towards Mu Baifei. His countenance was cold and emotionless, yet it gave off a domineering feeling, as though he was a divine weapon, cold and sharp at the same time. Stretching his hands out, Wang Xiao placed the stellar fruits in Wang Zhao's hands, only to see Wang Xiao frowning as he coldly stated, "Take them all out." Mu Baifei's countenance stiffened. One could only imagine the humiliation he felt at this moment. However, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and hand over all the stellar fruits to Wang Xiao. Only then did Wang Xiao turn around, as a few others walked towards him. Wang Xiao distributed the stellar fruits to them. Evidently, these people were brought here by him. Not only did he want to bathe in the celestial lake, he also wanted to bring his people along with him. If Qin Wendian were to glance over, he would discover that the person who used the giant axe to ambush him had also accepted Wang Zhao's distribution of the stellar fruits. We still need to make some more preparations. Wang Xiao furrowed his brows as he stared at Qin Wendian and Ouyang Guangxing. Ouyang Guangxing and those from the Mystic Moon sect were together. Not long ago, Ouyang Guangxing had helped the Mystic Moon sect, and now they had formed an alliance to resist the pressure from the Sky Demon sect and Beast King Hall. As for Qin Wenyan, he had just killed a swallow swordsman, and there were many eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. However, none of them dared to make a move against him. Because so many people had fallen, there were only 40+ people left in this space. Wang Xiao gazed at the surroundings, as he pointed his finger in the direction of the mountain rampart. Earlier, those who had entered the celestial lake were dragged here by the hurricane. Those who don't wish to die, go over there. Wang Xiao pointed at the mountain rampart, his voice as cold as ever. His indifferent countenance made it seem as though he was merely speaking a normal sentence. The countenances of many stiffened, as expressions of astonishment appeared on their faces. After which, they narrowed their eyes as they discovered something interesting. Coincidentally, there were 6 people standing beside Wang Xiao. Including Wang Xiao himself, there were a total of 7 people. And there were only 7 slots for the Celestial Lake, and only 7 people had the qualifications to bathe in the Celestial Lake. The Wang clan of the War Continent had only sent 7 people, and the meaning behind this was obvious. Especially after hearing Wang Zhao's words, the crowd could feel that he was truly arrogant. Wang Xiao wasn't just an ordinary kind of arrogance. His ambitions were extremely great, and he wanted the people he brought from the War Continent to monopolize the Celestial Lake. However, since they had already reached this step, although many of them knew that they didn't have much hope of obtaining the Celestial Lake, they still held onto a glimmer of hope. None of them were willing to give up. In fact, there was even one person who believed that his astral energy was extremely abundant. He stepped into the tempest in front of him, wanting to make another attempt. Clean up the battlefield. Wang Xiao icily spoke. Momentarily, the people around him gathered together in a row as an intense killing intent gushed forth. At this moment, all of them seemed to have transformed into ice-cold divine weapons, exuding a cold-blooded aura. They slowly walked towards the group of experts, causing their countenances to freeze. After which, they only saw the glow of the various divine weapons radiating from them. Kill! A howl of rage rang out as killing intent shook the heavens. The divine weapons of those from the Wang clan all shone with a terrifying killing intent as they slashed out in anger. Just like what Wang Xiao had said, they started to clean up the battlefield. The Wang clan, who had always maintained a low profile, finally revealed their terrifying countenance after staring at the celestial lake, sweeping away everything in their path. Their killing intent was akin to a raging tempest, and very quickly, for people had already died under the divine weapons of the Wang clan. Qian Mingyu and her companions stood there, and upon seeing the Wang clan slowly walking over, her countenance paled. At this moment, Qian Mingyu's emotions were extremely complicated. Usually, she was extremely conceited, but today, at the final juncture, she didn't even have the qualifications to fight. She was about to be eliminated. This was cruel, but it was also the truth. She had no choice but to face it. She was very clear what the confrontation today meant. It meant that when she clashed against the other transcendent powers of the 9 continents, she was already suppressed. Not only that, these transcendent powers were merely a portion of the 9 continents. Even so, she had already lost her luster. In the future, how would she be able to fight for a place in the grand stage of the 9 continents? If this situation persisted in the future, she would definitely be eliminated by the passing of time, becoming mediocre. In the countless years of the 9 continents, which one of those dazzling characters didn't dazzle the eyes of those of the same generation? Step by step, they rose to prominence. Sighing in her heart, Qian Mingyu walked towards the direction of the mountain rampart, not even turning her head back. Today, she was first defeated by Mu Baifei. After that, Qin Wenyan single-handedly fought against Mu Baifei and the other 2 swallow swordsmen. And after that, Wang Shao used his absolute dominance to suppress Mu Baifei. One could very well imagine how pitiful her defeat was. Seeing Qian Mingyu leading those from the Green Cloud Pavilion away, the countenances of many in the crowd dimmed, and they all gave up on the battle. The main reason for participating in the refinement grounds was for the sake of the celestial pool. The secondary reason was for tempering oneself, but preserving one's life was always the most important. Although it was regretful that they didn't have the chance to bathe in the celestial pool, they had still benefited greatly from this experience. In the future, they would definitely put in more effort in their cultivation and strive to compete against these dazzling characters. Wang Shao, Ouyang Quangxing, Mu Baifei, and that unknown fellow. These people were all remembered by the crowd. In the future, they would leave behind a thick mark in the history of Grand Xia. Although the person who stepped into the tempest was unwilling, he still felt that he wouldn't be able to pass it. Hence, he chose to retreat instead. However, just as he was about to exit the tempest, his astral energy was completely depleted, and his body was shredded into pieces. He died within the tempest, causing many in the crowd to sigh with regret. Without the stellar fruits, none of those present had the confidence to pass the tempest. Only to see Wang Shao sweeping his gaze over the crowd. There weren't many people left, only the Sky Demon Sect, Beast King Hall, Mystic Moon Hall, and Ouyang Quangxing remained standing. Ouyang Quangxing's combat prowess was indeed impressive. He single-handedly fought against the Berserk Shiki, as well as the frenzied Yao Sheng, yet he didn't lose out in the slightest. No matter how violent the tempest was, he remained unmoved, and his attacks were as tyrannical as ever. Upon seeing their battle, the spectators from afar realized that although Ouyang Quangxing's personality was frivolous and did whatever he wanted, regardless of whether it was in terms of offense or defense, he was extremely stable. From this, one could see that his cultivation path was extremely stable, and his innate techniques were extremely solid as well. Other than those who were still fighting, the only ones remaining were Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing. Even Mu Baifei had already given up on this battle. Wang Shao walked towards Qin Wenyan, as the people behind him followed behind him. It was as though the 7 from the Wang clan of the War Continent were really here to clean up the battlefield. Cleaning them up one by one, they wanted to obtain the final 7 spots. Wang Shao waved his hands, causing the people behind him to halt their actions. He walked towards Qin Wenyan alone. He had always thought that only Ouyang Quangxing had the qualifications to be his opponent in this trial. But now that he saw Qin Wenyan, he wanted to see how strong this young man, who could contend against Mu Baifei and the other 2 swallow swordsmen, was. "I'll deal with her." One of the people behind Wang Shao glanced at Mo Qingqing. They understood Wang Zhao's intentions, but they couldn't allow Mo Qingqing to affect the battle between Wang Shao and Qin Wenyan. After speaking, that person walked towards Mo Qingqing. This person was none other than the person who had launched a sneak attack on Qin Wenyan earlier. Wang Zhao's footsteps quickened, as though he was running. Yellow sand billowed as a terrifying killing intent gushed forth. Qin Wentian's footsteps spun as he similarly sprinted towards Wang Zhao. Both of them radiated a domineering battle intent, but the only difference was their demeanor. Wang Zhao's aura was cold and sharp, akin to a divine weapon, while Qin Wentian's aura was that of a demon king, unexcelled in the world. Chapter 190. Wang Zhao and Qin Wenyan finally clashed against each other. Both of them simultaneously lifted their palms and attacked. From Wang Zhao's body, a fearsome sharpness gushed forth. His arms seemed to contain the sharpness of a divine weapon. Qin Wenyan blasted out with the falling mountain palms. The terrifying might of his palm was akin to the weight of a mountain peak as it smashed downwards, containing boundless might. A thunderous boom rang out as the falling mountain palms were shattered. Wang Zhao's palms and Qin Wentian's palms collided together as an ice-cold sharpness gushed into Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian stared at Wang Zhao with extreme coldness in his eyes. A dreamlike intent gushed forth from Qin Wentian's eyes, causing Wang Zhao's pupils to shrink. After which, his eyes turned silvery white, exuding an ice-cold tyrannical aura. Puchi! Qin Wenyan opened his mouth and spat out a beam of sword light. Wang Zhao's silhouette spun as a resplendent silver-colored flying dagger shot towards Qin Wenyan with lightning speed. The silver-colored lightning radiated from his palms, and in an instant, a boundless amount of silvery light danced about in the air. Qin Wentian's countenance froze. After which, he frenziedly lifted his palms to attack. The dragon's subduing fists howled in rage as he continuously attacked, defending against the incoming silver-colored flying dagger. Bzz! A resplendent ring of light accompanied the silver-colored flying dagger as it flew out, exuding an incomparably dazzling radiance. That whistling sound caused Qin Wenyan to feel an intense sense of danger. That was a golden hoop, and its might was extremely terrifying. Kuji imprint. Qin Wentian's palms blasted out with earth-shattering might. With a deafening boom, the golden hoop was jolted back, flying back into Wang Zhao's hands. At the same time, a silver-colored chain coiled over, wanting to lock Qin Wentian within. The golden hoop howled in rage as it blasted out once more, exuding a terrifying might. The Wang clan of the War Continent was an aristocratic clan of weaponsmiths. To them, all sorts of powerful divine weapons were no different from ordinary weapons. A blood-red light radiated from Qin Wentian's palm as demonic qi surged forth. He unleashed a palm imprint, firmly locking onto the chains. At the same time, his other palm once again blasted the golden hoop back. At this moment, Qin Wenyan seemed to be filled with endless power. A resplendent white light rose from Wang Zhao's body, as though the power of his bloodline was boiling. An even sharper aura enveloped his body, and a terrifying white light flashed in his eyes. His entire body seemed to be clad in armor, and his arms were covered in silver armor, cold and indestructible. Boom! Stepping out, Wang Zhao's entire body seemed to have transformed into a divine weapon. His eyes were fixed on Qin Wenyan, and the diamond ring in his hand blasted out. At the same time, his fist smashed towards Qin Wenyan. There seemed to be terrifying sharp edges on his fist. Wang Zhao of the War Continent, his entire body is like a divine weapon. How terrifying! The spectators all felt their hearts trembling in fear. Among the crowd, Wang Zhao, Ouyang Quangxing and Qin Wenyan were the strongest three. Wang Zhao had used all sorts of methods, yet he couldn't do anything to Qin Wenyan. And now he was finally enraged. Qin Wentian's palms were still locked onto his opponent's chains. Seeing his opponent dragging the chains closer to him, boundless sword light erupted forth from his body as the sword-type divine energy within his body unhesitatingly gushed forth. The sharpness contained within his body was enough to kill everything in its path. Boom! Qin Wenyan took a step forward, releasing the chains. His palms blasted out as numerous divine weapons transformed into a terrifying vortex, as thousands upon thousands of swords whistled through the air. Die! With a howl of rage, Qin Wenyan advanced with indomitable will. The blood-colored light infused into his swords, and his swords contained the intent of the sword monarch. The attacks of the two collided, and the dazzling light from the collision caused the spectators to be unable to open their eyes. After which, the spectators saw both Qin Wendian and Wang Xiao retreating. Especially Wang Xiao. His indestructible body, which was akin to a divine weapon, actually had traces of fresh blood dripping from it. This scene caused Wang Xiao to be stunned. After which, he inclined his head and released an even colder aura. Both of them took out a stellar fruit and swallowed it. Both of them stared at each other, knowing that they had met their strongest opponents. Qin Wendian glanced to the side. Mo Qingqing was currently fighting against the person wielding the gigantic axe, yet she was actually being completely suppressed. Her opponent was also a cultivator at the Yuanfu realm, and had 3 divine weapon astral souls. At this moment, he lifted his gigantic axe and slashed downwards in a frenzy. Mo Qingqing's countenance paled, and she did her best to defend, yet the impact of the attack still caused her to cough out blood. Her breathing was ragged, yet she didn't make a sound. She didn't want to disturb Qin Wentian's battle. Bzzz. Qin Wendian lifted his feet and sprinted in that direction, only to see the members of the Wang clan blocking his path. At the same time, he felt a sense of danger from behind him. Wang Xiao was advancing towards him, as a resplendent silvery light appeared in front of him. Wang Xiao coldly snorted, as a silvery orb appeared in his palm. As the orb erupted forth, it released countless silvery fragments, each of which contained a fearsome attack power. These fragments blotted out the skies as they swept towards Qin Wendian, akin to bolts of lightning. A blood-colored light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes as the power of his bloodline erupted forth. In front of him, a stone tablet appeared. This was none other than the Yellow Springs Monument. He had just obtained the Yellow Springs Monument and didn't know how to control it. But now he had no choice but to use it. Stomping his foot on the ground, Qin Wentian's demonic qi towered up to the skies as a blood-colored light danced in the air. Resplendent divine energy erupted forth, blocking the incoming silvery fragments. At the same time, he communicated with the Yellow Springs Monument, infusing it with the power of his bloodline. He could sense that the Yellow Springs Monument contained a terrifying amount of blood qi that could be activated by the power of his bloodline. Boom! An abrupt sound rang out, causing the hearts of the spectators to pound as the blood qi in their bodies churned wildly. The Yellow Springs Monument floated above Qin Wentian's head, as the blood-colored light unceasingly flowed into Qin Wentian's body. The Yellow Springs Monument stared at Wang Xiao, causing Wang Xiao to feel a chill in his heart. Bzzz. The Yellow Springs Monument flew towards Wang Xiao. Boom. Wang Xiao's heart pounded once more, as he lost control of his bloodline. He felt as though his blood vessels were about to explode. He couldn't be bothered with attacking, and could only retreat with increasing speed as his countenance turned ashen. As the Yellow Springs Monument flew back, Qin Wendian turned and sprinted towards Mo Qingqing. Boom boom. Those from the Wang clan all felt their hearts pounding. Their countenances were extremely unsightly to behold as they hurriedly evaded. Even Mo Qingqing was affected. As for Mo Qingqing, the countenance of the person opposite her was extremely heavy. He slashed out with his great axe before explosively retreating. Qingqing, follow me. Qin Wendian spoke, as he sped towards the person wielding the great axe. Mo Qingqing followed behind Qin Wendian, maintaining a certain distance between them. The person wielding the great axe madly fled, only to see Qin Wendian unceasingly striking out with the Yellow Springs Monument. Boom! His heart pounded as his countenance turned red. Boom! His heart pounded even faster as his veins popped out. Roar! That person roared in rage. Astral energy enveloped his entire body, yet Qin Wendian continued to pursue him relentlessly. The Yellow Springs Monument relentlessly chased after him, emitting a rhythmic yet terrifying sound. Dong! Another trembling sound rang out. That person finally couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, his face deathly pale. Dong dong dong. He stopped in his tracks, his heart beating rapidly. He turned around only to see the Yellow Springs stone tablet directly imprint on his body. Arg! A miserable scream rang out. The blood chi in his body exploded as his heart shattered. Blood splattered everywhere, landing on the Yellow Springs stone steel. However, the blood was directly absorbed by the Yellow Springs stone steel. His body softly slumped to the ground, dying an extremely miserable death. The crowd stopped fighting at the same time. They all looked at the stone tablet floating above Qin Wentian's head in horror. Their expressions were particularly interesting. The stone steel of the underworld, the rumored stone steel of the path of celestial pool trial. How did it fall into the hands of Qin Wenin? This fellow can actually control the Yellow Springs stone steel to attack. Ouyang Quangxing knew this, but he was still shocked in his heart. Subduing the Yellow Springs stone steel was one thing, but if Qin Wenin could really control it, it must have been forced out by that fellow Wang Xiao. Wang Xiao was from the Wang clan of the War Continent, and he had many divine weapons on him. Not only that, they were all extremely powerful, forcing Qin Wenin to use the Yellow Springs stone steel. However, when the Yellow Springs stone steel was in the hands of Qin Wenin, it didn't seem to be as powerful as before. This was probably because Qin Wentian's cultivation base was too weak. Here, Mo Qingqing walked to the side of Qin Wentian and passed him a medicinal pill. She had also consumed one earlier. When Qin Wentian stared at Mo Qingqing, the coldness in his eyes softened. That smile of his caused a strange feeling to appear in the hearts of the spectators. This fellow, who exuded a blood-colored demonic qi and the aura of a sovereign, actually had such a gentle side to him when facing Mo Qingqing. After swallowing the medicinal pill, Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing each consumed a stellar fruit. The two of them exchanged glances and smiled, feeling that it wasn't easy for them to reach this step. Qin Wentian cast a glance at Ouyang Quangxing's side, only to see that only 3 of the experts from the Mystic Moon Hall remained. From this, one could see how intense the battle earlier had been. Naturally, the Beast King Hall and Sky Demon sect had also suffered heavy losses as well. At this moment, those from the Beast King Hall and Sky Demon sect had actually gathered together with Wang Xiao and the rest. Evidently, after seeing the Yellow Springs stone steel, they knew how strong the threat Qin Wentian posed was. Ouyang, do we have enough stellar fruits? Qin Wentian stared at Ouyang Quangxing. I have 4 people with me. The amount of stellar fruits we have should be sufficient for us to cross over, Ouyang Quangxing replied. Right now, their goal was to cross the Tempest to the other side. After crossing over, the stellar fruits would no longer be of any use to them. Naturally, they wouldn't be stingy with their allies. Okay, let's enter. Qin Wentian stated. After Ouyang Quangxing distributed the stellar fruits, the 6 of them stepped into the Tempest, causing the gazes of the crowd to freeze. The 6 of them would occupy 6 slots. Not only that, other than the stellar fruits they had, the rest were all in Wang Zhao's hands. At this moment, the gazes of many in the crowd were fixated on Wang Xiao. Even those from the Beast King Hall and Celestial Palace were the same. There was only 1 slot left, and their hopes rested on Wang Xiao. Wang Zhao's countenance sank, as the coldness in his eyes grew even colder. Clutching the orb in his hands, a sharp aura emanated from him, giving off an intense sense of danger. Nobody dared to act recklessly. Initially, Wang Xiao had planned to bring the 7 from the Wang clan along to bathe in the celestial pool. But now, that was no longer possible. As he stared at Qin Wenin, the coldness in his eyes intensified. Qian Mingyu leaned against the mountain wall as she stared at Qin Wenin and the rest, an indescribable feeling in her heart. Qin Wenin had always taken the initiative to form an alliance with them. If it wasn't for the fact that there were conflicts due to the stellar fruits, Qin Wenin would definitely have given her the last slot. Chapter 191. After Qin Wenin and the rest stepped into the Tempest, they could instantly feel the sharpness of the cold wind. They didn't hesitate to release their astral energy to protect themselves. Stellar martial cultivators usually had weaker bodies, but demonic beasts were an exception. It was impossible for them to withstand the Tempest with their bodies alone. Maybe Qin Wentian's physique would be able to withstand it, but if he wanted to pass through it without the aid of astral energy, that was undoubtedly a fool's dream. Amidst the Tempest, Qin Wenyan held onto Mo Qingqing's hand. The two of them walked side by side, their bodies shrouded in astral light. Not only that, as the tempest raged on, the astral energy in their bodies was being depleted at an extremely fast rate. This was also the reason why those people died earlier. Luckily, Qin Wenyan and the others had already prepared the stellar fruits. Qingqing consumed the stellar fruits in advance. Qin Wenyan called out to Mo Qingqing, who was beside him. Mo Qingqing nodded her head, and after walking a third of the way, she consumed a stellar fruit. This way, her body would always be filled with astral energy. An hour later, Qin Wenyan and the rest finally passed through the tempest. They couldn't help but draw in a deep breath, feeling incomparably relaxed. How beautiful! Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes stared ahead. There were 7 celestial pools, each of them surrounded by towering astral stone pillars. Each and every one of the astral stone pillars seemed to be connected to the constellations in the sky. Resplendent astral light cascaded downwards like a waterfall, a magnificent sight to behold. This scene was like a dream, too beautiful. Celestial Lake. Those from the Mystic Moon Hall and Ouyang Guangxing had also arrived. They exchanged glances as smiles could be seen flickering in their eyes. After all, this trip to the celestial pools wasn't an easy one. Qin Wenyan pulled Mo Qingqing along as they walked towards the 3 from the Mystic Moon Hall. Glancing at the veiled maiden, he smiled, "Thank you all." When Qin Wenyan looked at him, he felt that the pair of eyes that were exposed were very bright and clear, as if there was a special emotion in them. This made Qin Wenyan feel a little surprised. The pair of eyes seemed to contain feelings. "I'm fine." The woman lowered her head and said softly. Qin Wenyan lightly nodded his head as he turned his gaze onto Ouyang Guangxing. Just as he was about to speak, Ouyang Guangxing laughed. "Ouyang Guangxing of the Azure Continent. As a friend, we should at least get to know each other again." Qin Wenyan from Chu, under the jurisdiction of the 9 Mystical Palace. Qin Wenyan smiled as he nodded his head to Ouyang Guangxing. His countenance was calm, no longer exuding the tyrannical demonic aura from earlier. The people of Chu under the jurisdiction of the 9 Mystical Palace are truly surprising. Ouyang Guangxing had never heard of Chu before, but he knew of the 9 Mystical Palace. Who would have thought that a small country under the jurisdiction of the 9 Mystical Palace would have such a character? Okay, let's get down to business first. Since we're already at the Celestial Lakes, we should at least enjoy the scenery of the legendary Celestial Lakes. Ouyang Guangxing smiled as he stared ahead. The others nodded their heads as they advanced forward. Within the 7 Celestial Lakes, there was a brilliant glow of astral light circulating within. "I'll enter first." Ouyang Guangxing stepped into one of the Celestial Lakes, and at the instant he did so, the astral stone pillar enveloping the Celestial Lake began to glow with a resplendent light as it actually began to move. After which, a terrifying surge of astral energy enveloped the entire Celestial Lake. Ouyang Guangxing's silhouette could no longer be seen, only a beautiful constellation diagram could be seen. "Let's enter as well." Qin Wenyan spoke to Mo Qingqing as the two of them entered their respective celestial lakes. The 2 from the Mystic Moon Hall also entered their respective celestial lakes, leaving only the veiled young lady standing there. Staring at the celestial lake where Qin Wenyan had entered, a teardrop fell from her beautiful eyes. However, it was a teardrop of happiness. "Wenty Gidge." A clear and melodious voice rang out. This was the voice of a young lady. The veiled young lady lifted her dainty hands to wipe away the tears at the corners of her eyes. She was truly happy. She had actually managed to help her Wenty Gidge. Over the past year, she had really suffered a lot. She had left her hometown and been taken to the Dark Moon Palace in Yuzhou City by her master, who had very strict requirements on her. Although she knew that her master was doing it for her own good, she didn't have any relatives on her side. Suddenly entering such a life made her very tired. The feeling of being able to see her Wenty Gidge again was extremely good. "Wenty Gidge, although I really want to chat with you, master is too strict with me." She would definitely investigate. "I could only secretly send Gu Xing to Chu to see you. Knowing that you are doing well and even obtained the title of champion, I was already extremely happy." You are indeed as I had imagined, you are starting to shine with your brilliance. The young lady seemed to be mumbling to herself. She wanted to chat with Qin Wenyan, so this was the only way. That's right. In the future, you will be even more outstanding. Not only in Chu, but also in the 9 continents and the Grand Xia Empire. The young lady happily murmured. Finally, she stepped into the celestial pool, and very quickly, she was enveloped by the astral light within the celestial pool. Qin Wenyan naturally didn't know that there was a young lady mumbling to herself outside. After he stepped into the celestial pool, he could deeply sense how abundant the astral energy here was. Inclining his head and staring at the skies, the astral light was akin to a waterfall cascading down the astral stone pillars. This feeling was simply too wondrous, especially when compared to the feeling he had when he was in the tempest earlier. Qin Wenyan sat cross-legged as he gradually entered a state of dreamland. He had cultivated the dreamcast art, and the speed of his cultivation in his dreams was even faster. Abruptly, he released his astral souls, as strands of astral light landed on them. After being tempered and filtered by the astral soul, they transformed into astral energy that was compatible with him and entered his body. Gradually, the astral energy in his body became even more abundant, as it slowly gushed into his arterial pathways and acupoints. Crashing sounds rang out as his 9 arterial pathways roared unceasingly. In here, the astral energy seemed to be inexhaustible. If he didn't crazily absorb it, how could he face himself? Qin Wenyan was very clear that for stellar martial cultivators, breaking through to the arterial circulation realm and the body refinement realm, the reliance on astral energy was the greatest. Although it wasn't completely dependent on astral energy, as long as there was sufficient astral energy, it would be very easy for one to break through to the next level. And once one stepped into Yuanfu, the reliance on astral energy would no longer be as strong as now. After all, after a stellar martial cultivator formed their Yuanfu, the capacity of their Yuanfu would be limited. No matter how much astral energy they absorbed, their Yuanfu would only be filled to the brim. If they wanted to break through to the next level, they would still need to increase the capacity of their Yuanfu. This wasn't something that could be achieved simply by absorbing astral energy. This was also the reason why the celestial lake wasn't that attractive to Yuanfu cultivators. Qin Wenyan cultivated for 3 days straight. He could feel that his 9 arterial pathways and acupoints had all been opened to the extreme, and his Yuanfu was only a step away from breaking through to the Yuanfu. At this moment, he opened his eyes, as astral energy flickered within them. I've already passed the celestial lake refinement grounds, but where is the secret of the Azure Emperor? Could it be that I really have to look for Fairy Qingmei? Qin Wenyan bitterly smiled. But how could Fairy Qingmei possibly agree to meet him? Touching his interspatial ring, Qin Wenyan retrieved the map. Looking at the location marked on the map, it should indeed be the Celestial Lake Palace. However, was this map merely to guide him to the Celestial Lake Palace? At this moment, Qin Wenyan's heart pounded violently as he saw the ancient characters inscribed on the map. He flipped the map over as streams of astral light cascaded downwards, illuminating the surface of the map. The astral stone pillars were also illuminated by the astral light, and in an instant, numerous ancient characters floated out from the map, hovering in the air. These were the ancient characters of astral light. Qin Wenyan's heart pounded violently. This was the true map. The map was inscribed by the Azure Emperor later on. The map was on the reverse side, and the side without the characters was the front side. Only when bathed in the intense astral light of the celestial lake would the ancient characters appear. How could Qin Wenyan not be shocked by such a discovery? The secret of the Azure Emperor had finally been revealed. Art of the 9 Astral Palaces. Qin Wenyan gazed at the floating map as rows and rows of ancient characters floated above it. This was indeed a cultivation art, a demon-level cultivation art that allowed one to cultivate 9 Yuanfus. The secret of the Azure Emperor was real. Seriously reading through the ancient characters, imprinting them into his mind, Qin Wenyan's heart was filled with great waves. Others could only cultivate a single Yuanfu, But this art of the 9 astral mansions required one to cultivate 9 yuanfas. Not only that, one could only cultivate it when they were at the arterial circulation realm. According to the records of the art of the 9 astral mansions, one had to first cultivate a single yuanfu, and then break open the yuanfu. 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3. The number of yuanfas corresponded to the number of astral souls one had. This meant that if one's accomplishments in life were limited, and one could only condense a 3-star astral soul, then one could at most cultivate 3 yuanfas. Not only that, after the astral soul corresponded to the yuanfu, that yuanfu could only absorb the astral energy of the corresponding astral soul. For example, Qin Wentian's heavenly hammer astral soul corresponded to his first yuanfu. As such, this yuanfu could only absorb the astral energy from the heavenly hammer astral soul, or the astral energy that had been tempered by the heavenly hammer astral soul. After cultivating the art of the 9 astral mansions, I would immediately be able to condense 3 yuanfas, while others only have a single yuanfu. At that time, the amount of astral energy I would be able to condense would be at least 3 times that of others. Qin Wentian's heart was filled with excitement. This was only the most obvious benefit, and he was already impatient. After he stepped into yuanfu, insta-killing yuanfu cultivators at the same level as him would be a piece of cake. At that time, squashing Yi Wuke to death would be as easy as squashing an ant. Qin Wentian was filled with anticipation. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian immediately started his cultivation. He was very clear that there was no place more suitable than the Celestial Lake to cultivate the art of the 9 astral mansions. Maybe, this painting was discovered by the Azure Emperor, which was why Fairy Qingmei chose to seclude herself here, forcibly occupying the Celestial Lake. If this was the case, it seemed that Qin Wentian's conjecture was correct. The relationship between the Azure Emperor and Fairy Qingmei had never been severed. What kind of cruelty did they experience to make others believe that Fairy Qingmei hated the Azure Emperor to the core? Most probably, this story must have been extremely touching. Qin Wentian didn't know that at this moment, Fairy Qingmei was paying close attention to his every move. After waiting for thousands of years, a suitable successor had finally appeared. Chapter 192. After Qin Wentian, Ouyang Feng and the rest entered the Tempest, the rest of the cultivators from the Wang clan clashed against each other for the stellar fruits in Wang Zhao's possession. In this battle, all the members of the Wang clan who had followed Wang Zhao to the Immortal Lake had died. However, the others had also paid a heavy price. Over 20 of them had been slain. Even Yao Xing from the Sky Demon sect and Shiki from the Beast King Hall had suffered grievous injuries. The ending of the battle could be said to be extremely tragic. Ultimately, they had failed to obstruct Wang Zhao from entering the Tempest. Looking at Wang Zhao's gaze as he turned his head to look at the rest of the cultivators, they all felt a chill run down their spines. Those who had followed Wang Zhao had all died in battle. One could only imagine Wang Zhao's rage. Currently, Wang Zhao hated them to the core and wanted to kill them as soon as possible. Wang Zhao also arrived at the Celestial Lake and stepped into the last Celestial Lake. As for the others, they were all busy searching for their way back. 7 of them had already entered the Celestial Lake, and the others had no more chances to enter. The refinement grounds of the Immortal Lake had ended. With regards to the happenings in the outside world, Qin Wentian was completely oblivious. He was completely immersed in his cultivation. On the 6th day since he entered the Celestial Lake, the 9 stellar meridians in his body had finally expanded to their limits. They began to revolve at a frenzied pace as boundless astral energy flowed into them. At the point where the 9 stellar meridians intersected, a terrifying tempest manifested, causing rumbling sounds to echo out from within his body. In the center of the tempest, a whirlpool could be seen. Finally, the astral energy in the 9 stellar meridians condensed into liquid droplets that flowed into the whirlpool. The whirlpool transformed into a container, and the liquid droplets flowed into it unceasingly. Finally, the astral lake was formed. That was the birth of a yuanfu. The yuanfu gradually took shape, yet the tempest showed no signs of stopping. On the contrary, it grew increasingly violent. At the same time, the terrifying energy within the celestial lake frenziedly rushed towards the third astral gate in Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness. At this moment, Qin Wenyan was multitasking. Not only did he want to condense his Yuanfu, he also wanted to open his astral gate. This was because he needed to condense his third astral soul. Only by condensing his third astral soul at the moment of breaking through to Yuanfu would he be able to divide his Yuanfu into three. Only then would he be able to form the perfect third Yuanfu. This was an opportunity that Qin Wenyan didn't want to miss out on. With such a vast amount of astral energy, it was undoubtedly the most suitable method to open the astral gate. The success rate was much higher compared to relying on Yuan meteor stones. Qin Wenyan didn't take too long to open the third astral gate. After which, his perception began to drift along the astral stone pillar, drifting towards the void. Because of the spirit beasts, Qin Wenyan quickly sensed the existence of several constellations in the fifth heavenly layer. As for his third astral soul, Qin Wenyan had long since made his choice. It was the Demon Sovereign constellation ranked first in the War Beast Index. For the sake of this astral soul, Qin Wenyan didn't even bother to attempt to condense his astral soul from the sixth heavenly layer. The Demon Sovereign astral soul was ranked first in the War Beast Index. From this, one could see how tyrannical it was. To Qin Wenyan, who cultivated the Fiend transformation art, this astral soul was undoubtedly the best choice. Very quickly, Qin Wentian's perception arrived in front of the Demon Sovereign constellation. The violent astral energy within was filled with a terrifying demonic qi. The Demon Sovereign constellation was akin to an ancient astral war beast, exuding a sense of majesty. Qin Wenyan didn't hesitate and chose to communicate with it. Astral light cascaded downwards, illuminating Qin Wentian's body. Not too long later, the third astral soul above Qin Wentian's head began to glow with a golden light. After which all three astral souls were released at the same time. From the 9 heavenly layers, the light from the 3 astral souls cascaded downwards, directly into the newly opened Yuanfu in Qin Wentian's body. The whirlpool of the 9 astral meridians frenziedly refined the astral energy, transforming it into liquid droplets that flowed into his Yuanfu. As the tricolored liquid entered his Yuanfu began to expand bit by bit. The tricolored liquid, 3 different types of energy, were clearly separated from each other. They were located in 3 different locations within his Yuanfu, unceasingly suppressing his Yuanfu. This transformation continued unceasingly, causing Qin Wenyan to sigh in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that he was in this celestial pool, it would have been extremely difficult for him to find such conditions to cultivate the art of the 9 astral palaces. After an unknown period of time, Qin Wenyan finally opened his eyes. Although he was still in the celestial pool, the current him felt exceptionally fatigued. He had expended too much of his mental energy. Success! A radiant smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he kept the scroll. Drawing in a deep breath, he closed his eyes. Within his body, the 3 Yuanfu sat there, filled with tricolored liquid. Not only that, his Yuanfu was connected to the 9 astral meridians, causing his entire body to feel a sense of fullness. With a slight intention of his will, his body floated up into the air, and he could already soar through the air. What a marvelous feeling! A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face. This trip to the Demon Mountain City could be said to be perfect. Now, he needed to spend some time to familiarize himself with his new cultivation base, and to consolidate his foundation. Qin Wenyan wanted to continue cultivating, but at this moment, the surrounding astral light gradually dimmed, as the astral energy enveloping the celestial pool dissipated. Inclining his head, Qin Wenyan discovered that Ouyang Quangxing, Mo Qingqing and the rest had already exited, and were currently looking in his direction. And on top of one of the astral stone pillars, an otherworldly silhouette could be seen. This silhouette was none other than the supreme beauty that stood beside the palace mistress of the celestial lake. She was as cold as ever, casually standing there, as though she was an otherworldly being. In fact, she seemed to fit in perfectly with the beautiful scenery of the celestial pool, as though she wanted to merge into it. Time's up. Her voice was cold as she lowered her head, casting a glance in the direction of Qin Wenin. Time's up. An expression of disappointment appeared on Qin Wentian's face. He felt that the amount of time he had was too short. He still wanted to consolidate his foundation, and at the same time, he hoped to borrow the power of the astral energy to pry into the memories of the tiny astral being. But what made him depressed was that the moment he finished cultivating, the time limit was already up. He really wanted to stay here and cultivate for a period of time. If that was the case, the benefits he could reap in a single day would surpass 10 days in the outside world. But looking at the cold countenance of the supreme beauty, he knew that it was impossible. After exiting the celestial pool, Qin Wenyan turned to Emo Qingqing as he smiled. "How is it? Did you improve?" "I'm at the second level of Yuanfu now." Emo Qingqing smiled as she nodded her head. "Ha, it seems like all of you have improved." Ouyang Guangxing laughed. He too had broken through to Yuanfu and was extremely excited. Qin Wenin glanced at Ouyang Guangxing and the other members of the Mystic Moon Hall, as a smile appeared on his face. "However, that fellow Wang Xiao has also broken through to Yuanfu. You have to be careful of him in the future. The Wang clan of the War Continent is extremely powerful, and as Wang Xiao matures, he would gradually gain the right to speak in the Wang clan," Ouyang Guangxing reminded Qin Wenin. The various transcendent powers of the 9 continents, regardless of sect or clan, were all incomparably powerful. Among them, there were many outstanding juniors. However, not all of them would be noticed by the upper echelons. Only those with outstanding talent would be able to attract the attention of those in the upper echelons. If you wanted to gain the right to speak in the sect or clan, you had to continue growing, eliminating competitors of the same generation, in order to attract the attention of those in the upper echelons. If not, even if you died, only your parents and relatives would pay attention to you. As for those at the peak of the 9 continents, they would only casually pay attention to you. Survival of the fittest, the competition between the transcendent powers was far more brutal than one could imagine. And based on Wang Zhao's current display of talent, it was very likely that he would become the representative of the younger generation of the Wang clan in the future. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He would temporarily remember the name Wang Xiao in his mind. "Let's go." The Ice Maiden was still as cold as ever. She was a woman of few words, and with a leap, she led the way out of the refinement grounds. The journey here was fraught with difficulties, but the journey back was smooth and unimpeded. Not long after, they arrived at the entrance of the celestial lake. Ouyang, Jiang Ting and the rest were waiting for Ouyang Guangxing outside. Upon seeing him, a smile appeared on their faces. "Jiang Ting, my fiancé." Ouyang Guangxing smiled at Qin Wenin. "Jiang Ting, this is my friend, Qin Wenin." Qin Wentian smiled and nodded to Jiang Ting. From Ouyang Guangxing's words, he already knew that Jiang Ting was from the Jiang clan of the Wind Continent. The Jiang clan was also a transcendent power and had great influence in the Wind Continent. Jiang Ting contemplated Qin Wentian. She knew Ouyang Guangxing's personality very well. That fellow was extremely arrogant, and since he was friends with Qin Wentian, it was enough to prove that Qin Wentian was extraordinary. She politely smiled and nodded to Qin Wentian, exuding the demeanor of a lady from a noble family. "Many thanks for the hospitality from the Celestial Lake Palace. Farewell." Ouyang Guangxing turned his head and smiled at the Ice Maiden. However, the maiden was still as cold as ever and didn't reply. Helpless, they could only leave with their demonic beasts. Outside the Celestial Lake Palace, the crowd bid their farewells. Qin Wenin stared at the departing silhouettes of Ouyang Guangxing and the rest before nodding his head to those from the Mystic Moon Hall. The maiden from the Mystic Moon Hall stared at the departing silhouette of the White Crane, as a trace of reluctance flashed in her eyes. "Let's go." The maiden spoke in a light voice, as they also mounted their demonic beasts and soared into the skies, departing from the Celestial Lake Palace. Within a certain palace, Fairy Qingmei's silhouette sat there. The palace mistress of the Celestial Lake Palace was still beside her, and the cold-looking maiden had also arrived. "Do you like him?" Fairy Qing asked in a low voice upon seeing the cold maiden. "I don't know." The cold-looking maiden lightly shook her head, as though she was extremely obedient. Only in front of Fairy Qingmei would she act this way. It doesn't matter if you don't like him. Just go to his side first and take care of his safety. Take good care of his safety. Fairy Qingmei smiled, her words causing a look of jealousy to appear on the face of the Celestial Lake Palace mistress. Only in front of her junior sister Qing would her master reveal such a gentle side. She knew that Fairy Qingmei doted on her junior sister Qing the most. Yet today, she actually wanted junior sister Qing to protect that young man. From this, one could see how much importance Fairy Qingmei placed on him. Her master's feelings for the Azure Emperor were truly deep. Right. Even when facing Fairy Qingmei was still as cold as ever. Her words were as precious as gold, yet Fairy Qingmei's gaze was as gentle as ever. Being very familiar with Qing's personality, she naturally wouldn't blame Qing. Remember, don't help him in everything. If he tries to deceive you with flowery words, just ignore him. Only when his life is truly in danger can you act. Fairy Qingmei smiled as she continued, also, don't reveal your identity. Qin Wendian nodded. Qing knows. The transcendent maiden nodded her head, memorizing Fairy Qingmei's words. However, did all men really know how to speak flowery words? Go on. Fairy Qingmei nodded. A pair of beautiful wings unfurled behind Qing's back, flapping gently. Her silhouette flickered as she vanished from sight. Her speed was unimaginably terrifying. Chapter 193. The skies above the royal capital of Chu were clear and boundless, with the warm rays of the sun cascading down onto the earth. Occasionally, a few white clouds could be seen drifting by. A white crane swooped down from the skies, soaring into the skies above the Chu country. On the back of the white crane, a handsome young man and a beautiful young lady stood side by side, their robes fluttering in the wind. I'm back. Qin Wendian gazed down at the royal capital. 2 months felt like an eternity to him. This time around, he had traversed many countries, heading towards the Demon Mountain city of the Grand Xia Empire, where he had an extraordinary experience. This might have been the first time he ventured out into the world, but it was also the first step he had taken towards the Grand Xia Empire. During the refinement grounds, he understood what it meant by, there's always a sky beyond a sky. Some of the outstanding characters in the Chu country, when placed in the outside world, were truly ordinary. Regardless of Ouyang Quangxing or Wang Xiao, any one of them would be unrivaled existences below Yuanfu, and could even fight against ordinary Yuanfu cultivators. Even the Swallow Swordsman, Mu Baifei and the other two could easily deal with Xikong Mingyue and Orkun. Not only that, during this trip, Qin Wendian had discovered the secret of the Azure Emperor. This was undoubtedly his greatest harvest. In any case, the experience of the refinement grounds at the Celestial Lake would become an important part of his life. The white crane soared through the skies, circling above the Emperor's Star Academy. Many in the crowd inclined their heads, and upon seeing Mo Qingqing's white crane, their eyes froze. After Qin Wendian caused such a huge wave in the royal capital of Chu, he actually disappeared for 2 months. So it turned out that he was together with Mo Qingqing. Because Mo Qingqing rarely appeared in the Emperor's Star Academy, no one discovered her presence. The reason why Qin Wendian was considered missing was because he had attracted too much attention during this period of time. If it was in the past, it would have been normal for him to go out and temper himself for a few months. How did the Emperor's Star Academy become like this? Qin Wendian's countenance grew incredibly unsightly as he stared at the current state of the Emperor's Star Academy. He could only feel a surge of anger coursing through his entire body. The white crane landed in Qin Wendian's courtyard. An instant later, Old Gu, Mustang, Luo Huan, Fan Li and Qin Yao all appeared in the courtyard. You're back. When Old Gu saw Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing, a hint of a smile flickered in his eyes. To him now, compared to before Qin Wendian had left, he seemed to have aged a lot. Grandfather. Mo Qingqing naturally discovered it as well. Her heart involuntarily trembled. Teacher, what happened in the academy? Qin Wendian turned his gaze onto Mustang, as bewilderment flashed in his eyes. Why did the current Emperor Star Academy look so different from before? There were so many buildings missing, as though they had been razed to the ground. This was done by Yu Hanshan and his subordinates from the Azure Emperor Palace. After Yu Qingfeng's death, Yu Hanshan couldn't find what he wanted, so he could only vent his anger on the Emperor Star Academy. Sadly, even after digging a hole in the Emperor Star Academy, he still wasn't able to find anything. He also had no way to find out who killed Yu Qingfeng, and could only dejectedly leave. Mustang replied, as a cold glint of light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. The Azure Emperor Palace, Yu Hanshan. He would remember this name. Yu Hanshan didn't suspect Qin Wentian, because he was already a stranger to Qin Wentian. He only saw Yu Qingfeng injuring Qin Wentian before, and subconsciously assumed that Yu Qingfeng was stronger than Qin Wentian. How could he have made such a connection? As for whether or not he suspected the Emperor Star Academy, only Yu Hanshan himself would know. He had caused the Emperor Star Academy to be in such a state, and even if he didn't suspect anything, he had still vented the anger in his heart. How's the current situation in the royal capital? Qin Wentian asked again. Before he left, the situation here was already extremely grim. Indeed, upon hearing his question, Mustang furrowed his brows as he replied in a heavy voice, "Not very good. The troops led by the Qin clan are pressuring the royal clan very tightly. Hence, the royal clan hopes to eradicate the threat posed by the Emperor Star Academy as soon as possible. In addition to the interference from the 9 Mystical Palace, the Emperor Star Academy is currently in grave danger. Not only that, other than the 9 Mystical Palace, I suspect that there are other transcendent powers in the royal capital as well. It's just that they have yet to reveal themselves." Old Gu continued. Since he said this, it was evident that he had some confidence. Currently, the royal capital was filled with a sense of urgency, as though a dark cloud was pressing down on it. "Qingqing, follow me back to see your family first." Old Gu spoke to Mo Qingqing. "As for Wentian, you don't need to care about the matters outside. Focus on your cultivation." "Right." Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing both nodded their heads. After which, Mo Qingqing and Old Gu departed together. Mustang's eyes flickered with starlight as he stared at Qin Wentian. After which, he nodded his head lightly, as though he was gratified. He didn't say anything else and merely patted Qin Wentian on his shoulders before departing. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto Luo Huan. Luo Huan was still as sexy and beautiful as ever, but there seemed to be something missing compared to the past. It was as though she was angry. That's right, Luo Huan was no longer as passionate as before. The her in the past always had a frivolous air about her. Maybe it was because she was filled with yearning for life. However, her old friend of many years, Mountain, had died. Next, the Emperor Star Academy was facing an unprecedented crisis, and they were even being bullied by the Azure Emperor Palace. As a member of the Emperor Star Academy, she was powerless to resist. Such a feeling made Luo Huan feel extremely unbearable, but what else could she do? She could only force a smile on her face. Sister Luo Huan. Qin Wentian sighed in his heart as he sensed the depressing aura radiating from his senior sister. He still remembered the first time he met Luo Huan. On a wall in the Sky Harmony City, Luo Huan's alluring figure could be seen sprinting, causing people to feel as though they were filled with sunshine. Walking forward, Qin Wentian gave Luo Huan a hug. As she released her hug, a playful smile appeared on her beautiful face as she stared at Qin Wentian. "Smelly brat, you actually dare to take advantage of your senior sister so brazenly? Who asked senior sister to be so beautiful?" Qin Wentian laughed in a silly manner. "You sure have a sweet mouth." Luo Huan rolled her eyes at Qin Wentian. This junior brother of hers, compared to a year ago, had truly transformed. His entire demeanor was completely different. "Senior sister." Fan Lu walked towards Luo Huan, opening his arms wide. His gaze was gentle and clear, wanting to give Luo Huan a hug as well. "Damn fatty, you dare to come up and try?" Luo Huan suddenly interjected, as she stared at Fan Lu with a smile that was not a smile. Momentarily, an expression of grievance appeared on Fan Li's face as he replied, Senior sister, you can't be so biased. Who asked you to not be as handsome as junior brother Qin? Luo Huan giggled as she lifted her foot and left. As long as she could see that Qin Wenyan was safe and sound, it was enough. Fan Le bitterly smiled, but when he turned to look at Qin Wenyan, his eyes lit up as he asked, "Boss, where did you go? Did you make any progress with the great beauty mo?" Seeing the lecherous look in Fan Li's eyes, Qin Wenyan cursed in a low voice, "Fatty, what's your current cultivation level?" "Peak of the arterial circulation realm, slower than you again." Fan Le shrugged, causing Qin Wenyan to be slightly bewildered. But when he thought of Fan Li's ability, which allowed him to easily see through the cultivation bases of others, he understood. This damned fatty must have already seen through his breakthrough to Yuanfu. In that case, quickly go back and cultivate. Qin Wenyan laughed. "Don't worry, fatty, am a genius. Do you think I won't be able to catch up to you?" Swaying his fat body, Fan Le swaggered away. Only then did Qin Wenyan turn to Qin Yao as he called out in a gentle voice, "Sis." As he spoke, Qin Wenyan gave Qin Yao a hug. "You're already so big, yet you're still so playful. Let me go get you something to eat." Qin Yao rolled her eyes at Qin Wenyan. She was still as youthful and beautiful as ever. A white blur dashed over as Little Rascal dashed into Qin Wentian's embrace. Little Rascal's speed is getting faster and faster. Qin Wenyan rubbed Little Rascal's little head. However, Little Rascal didn't seem to have grown in size. He didn't know if Little Rascal's size would only appear when he transformed. After returning to the Emperor Star Academy, Qin Wenyan kept a low profile and quietly cultivated in his courtyard. Now that he had stepped into Yuanfu, he needed to consolidate his foundations and get used to the new Yuanfu realm. In fact, very few people in the royal capital knew that Qin Wenyan had returned. Or rather, they didn't know what Qin Wenyan had been doing during this period of time. This name had not been heard for a very long time, and gradually, it faded from the memories of the masses. No matter what kind of glory a person had created, time would still dilute people's memories of him. After all, everyone had their own lives, and there were too many things that they needed to pay attention to. Only when they reappeared one day would people remember that such a person once existed. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. Occasionally, there would be bloody battles occurring in the royal capital, and the most common one would be the bloody battle between the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy. Sake Street was a restaurant street in the imperial city. This street was tens of thousands of meters long, and it was very wide. There were all kinds of restaurants on both sides, and they were all at least 2 stories high. Many people liked to drink at the tables on the balconies of the restaurants, drinking and chatting. Watching the people below was also a kind of pleasure. Sake Street was very close to the Emperor Star Academy. Currently, this area was occupied by the students of the Royal Academy, and they even stayed here to monitor the movements of the Emperor Star Academy. At this moment, a certain inn was no longer as noisy as it was in the past. On the balcony, Yi Ran of the Yi clan and Elder Yu of the Royal Academy were currently enjoying their wine. Sitting at the same table as them were a few other young men, and one of them was clad in white. This young man was none other than Yi Wuk, exuding an extraordinary demeanor. "Wuk, congratulations on stepping into the 2nd level of Yuanfu." Elder Yu bowed to Yi Wuk, silently admiring this young man in front of him. Yi Wuk was already ranked number 4 among the 10 prodigies of the royal capital, pushing Chiu Mo down. And now his strength had improved yet again, stepping into the 2nd level of Yuanfu. "It's been so long, yet I only broke through to the next level. There's nothing to congratulate me about." Sikong, on the other hand, is the one who should be congratulated instead since he has already stepped into Yuanfu. Yi Wuk smiled as he glanced at Sikong Mingyue. Sikong Mingyue, however, didn't have an expression of happiness on his face. He was extremely calm as he drank his wine together with Yi Wuk and the rest, yet his eyes were filled with sharpness. In order to help him recover from his injuries, Sikong Mingyue had paid a huge price. And after his injuries were healed, he profited from the misfortune and stepped into Yuanfu. As for his injuries, they were inflicted by Qin Wenyan. How could he forget the humiliation he suffered that day? He really wanted to fight with Qin Wenyan again. Now that he had condensed an extremely powerful third astral soul, even if Qin Wenyan had also stepped into Yuanfu, he still had the confidence to fight against him. How hateful! Qin Wenyan had actually vanished without a trace. Not long ago, there were rumors that he had returned, but Sikong Mingyue didn't know if it was true or false. Chapter 194. During these days, Qin Wenyan quietly cultivated, keeping a low profile. After the previous experience of being assassinated, he knew that even if there were people who wanted him dead in the dark, the Emperor's Star Academy wouldn't be able to find out who it was that wanted him dead. 9 Mystical Palace? Royal Clan? Yi Clan? Or O Clan? There was no way to investigate. That shadowy figure who almost killed Qin Wenyan was killed on the spot, and all the clues were cut off. To Qin Wenyan, the most important thing now was still to cultivate. In the courtyard, Qin Wenyan opened his eyes, exuding a demonic aura. Now that he had condensed an innate link with the demon sovereign constellation, the astral energy he absorbed from the constellation contained a powerful demonic qi. This allowed him to better cultivate the fiend transformation art. Boss. Fan Lu walked over. Qin Wenyan stared at him as he asked, "Not going to cultivate again?" Teacher Mustang wants to lead some disciples to clear a street. Do you want to go? Fan Lu asked Qin Wenyan. Clear a street? Qin Wenyan's countenance stiffened. Yes, recently our Emperor's Star Academy has been besieged from all sides. The influence of the royal clan has already extended to our academy. Before this, because of the Azure Emperor Palace, the academy could only endure silently. But now, teacher can no longer sit still and wants to launch a sneak attack, wiping out all the people on Sake Street. Fan Lu explained. The royal clan dares to be so audacious to act so recklessly in the vicinity of our Emperor's Star Academy? Qin Wenyan's countenance stiffened. That's because they have a few extremely powerful characters with them. I have no idea where they came from, but each of them is in charge of a district. Our Emperor's Star Academy doesn't dare to act recklessly. Teacher said that these people might be from the 9 Mystical Palace, and they want to force our academy into a corner. Fan Lu replied. Qin Wenyan stood up. I'll go with you guys. Don't worry. Teacher has tacitly agreed for me to come. He said that this operation is to teach the royal clan a lesson. Fan Lu grinned, filled with anticipation. Most probably, the higher-ups of the academy would be participating in this operation. Qin Wenyan and the rest quickly gathered at a certain location in the Emperor's Star Academy. Mustang gazed at them as he commanded, "Let's split up and meet up at Clear River Street. Wenyan, you and I will be together." All right. Everyone nodded, after which they left one after another. This way, they wouldn't attract attention in a short period of time. On Sake Street, Yi Wuk, who was drinking, glanced downwards as a look of confusion appeared on his face. The number of people coming here seems to be quite frequent. Beside him, Yi Ran and Elder Yu squinted their eyes slightly. They seemed to have sensed something unusual as well. Spread the news, those from the Emperor's Star Academy have arrived. Yi Wuke gazed at the inn as he spoke. Very quickly, the entire Qinghe Street became lively. Some of the people who were drinking quietly hid in the inn, not daring to cause any trouble. They could only watch from the sidelines. Diagonally across from Yi Wuk's inn, a group of people appeared, causing Yi Wuk and Sikong Mingyue's expressions to freeze. Mustang, Qin Wenyan. Indeed, Qin Wenyan's injuries have long since healed. Just like what the news said, after disappearing for 2 months, he has appeared once again. A sharp light flashed in Sikong Mingyue's eyes, piercing towards Qin Wenyan. However, Qin Wenyan didn't even spare a glance in his direction, causing Sikong Mingyue to coldly laugh in his heart. Silhouettes unceasingly walked out from the inn, and very swiftly, on the street between the 2 rows of inns, a scene of a confrontation between 2 parties. A powerful battle intent permeated the air. Kill. A low voice abruptly rang out as both parties clashed. The weakest among them had a cultivation base at the 7th level of arterial circulation, while the stronger ones had a cultivation base at the second level of Yuanfu. Without wasting any time, they directly started the battle. Upon seeing such a scene, Qin Wenyan understood that the situation had already reached a point where only one side could survive. Senior sister Luo Huan has also stepped into Yuanfu. Qin Wenyan stared at Luo Huan, who was like a goddess of death, mercilessly reaping the lives of her opponents. In her heart, an intense killing intent burned. Yi Ran's gaze shifted to Yi Wuk. For this battle, it was evident that his opponents had come prepared and held the advantage. Although more and more experts were rushing over from afar, the Emperor Star Academy was also sending in more experts to join the fray. Boom! On the rooftop of an inn, the silhouette of an expert descended as a terrifying aura permeated the air. This person was clad in black robes, and he stared downwards with an intense killing intent. However, after he appeared, another silhouette appeared at the rooftop of the inn opposite him. That silhouette calmly stood there, yet he gave off a feeling of immense power. The two of them didn't move and only stared at each other. Evidently, they could feel the threat emanating from each other. Cracking sounds rang out, and the inn beneath their feet seemed to be unable to withstand that oppressive aura. Gradually, cracks appeared on the walls of the inn before it collapsed, transforming into rubble. However, they still stood there, incomparably calm. The terrifying aura gushed forth, causing a terrifying gust of cold wind to blow. Boom! That black-robed expert took a step forward, punching out with a simple punch, causing a black-colored tempest to manifest in the air. However, that old man still stood there calmly, his long white beard fluttering in the wind. At the instant the black-robed expert neared, a palm imprint blasted out. The instant this palm imprint blasted out, tens of thousands of palm imprints suppressed the heavens and earth, while the terrifying black-colored tempest also erupted forth. The terrifying destructive qi wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing numerous inns to collapse. The entire street was on the verge of being destroyed, and many of the spectators retreated far away as they stared at the ruins, their hearts trembling with fear. An expert at the upper 3 levels of Yuanfu. This time around, both sides are really going to fight for real. The hearts of the spectators trembled. Demonic beasts danced in the air, and from afar, more and more experts rushed over. Not only from the Royal Academy, even those from the Emperor Star Academy were madly rushing over. A small-scale battle seemed to have caused a chain reaction, gradually turning this place into a battlefield. The inn Yi Wuk was in didn't collapse. His gaze was sharp as he stared in the direction of Mustang. Sipping on a cup of wine, he coldly stated, "Mustang, are you trying to start a war?" Qin Wenyan slowly shifted his gaze onto Yi Wuk. He had long since heard of Yi Wuk's name. That was more than a year ago. The reason why he broke off the engagement with Autumn Snow was because the Yi clan had used Yi Wuk's name to propose a marriage to Autumn Snow. After that, he had met Yi Wuk a few more times. This person was indifferent in handling matters, and from that indifferent attitude, one could see the pride in his heart. Mustang didn't bother with Yi Wuk. Although Yi Wuk was powerful, according to seniority, he could still be considered a junior. Since Yi Wuk spoke to him in such a manner, there was no need for Mustang to bother with him. "You sure know how to act." Yi Ran lightly laughed as he stated to Yi Wuk, "Wuk, based on your cultivation base at the second level of Yuanfu, I'm afraid that elder from the Emperor Star Academy won't be your opponent in a short period of time." The elder he was referring to was naturally Mustang. However, upon hearing that Yi Wuk had already stepped into the second level of Yuanfu, Qin Wenyan was somewhat taken aback. "Compete with him?" Yi Wuk laughed as he glanced at Mustang. "There's no meaning to it." "Indeed, there's no meaning to it. You are an entire generation lower than him." Yi Ran's words contained hints of flattery. After all, in the Yi clan, Yi Wuk's status was extraordinary. As an elder from a branch family, his authority couldn't be compared to Yi Wuk's. Especially now that Yi Wuk's cultivation base wasn't any weaker than his. Mustang casually laughed as he stared at Qin Wenyan, feeling gratified in his heart. Mustang had the Heavenly Eyes astral soul, and could naturally tell that Qin Wenyan had already broken through to Yuanfu. Back then, when Qin Wenyin was at the arterial circulation realm, he had always been able to fight against geniuses like Xikong Mingyue and Luo Qianqiu. Now that he had stepped into Yuanfu, even if he couldn't contend against Yi Wuke for now, based on Qin Wentian's experience, it wouldn't be long before he could trample Yi Wuke beneath his feet. As for Xikong Mingyue, he had already been completely ignored by Mustang. I'm already old, and my achievements are limited. However, Wenyin, you are different. Don't put these self-proclaimed geniuses of Chu in your eyes, just treat them as ordinary mortals. You have to broaden your horizons. Don't limit yourself to comparing yourself to these people. Mustang spoke to Qin Wenyin, as though he was instructing Qin Wenyin. However, wasn't it also a reply to Yi Wuke? He was telling Qin Wenyin not to compare himself to these people. Evidently, he was saying that Yi Wuke and the others didn't have the qualifications to compare themselves to Qin Wenyin. And indeed, upon hearing Mustang's words, Yi Wuke's indifferent eyes narrowed, as a glint of sharpness flickered within. As for Yi Ran, he directly stared at Mustang as he coldly stated, "What a joke. Time passes so quickly. Back then when I went to the Sky Harmony City, you had just started your cultivation journey. At that time, the Yi clan went to the Bai clan to propose marriage. Actually, I had already noticed you that night when you were still at the Bai clan, and followed you to the Qin clan. Now that you've already reached such a level, it feels so surreal. The Bai clan must be regretting their decision now, right?" Mustang sighed. Hearing Mustang's tone, Qin Wenyin could sense a hint of sadness. He suddenly thought that maybe Teacher Mustang wanted to seek revenge on the Yi clan. Mountain was raised by Teacher Mustang, and Mustang naturally knew about the matter of him being intercepted by Yi Wuke when he was pursuing Qin Wenyin. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Today, Teacher Mustang wanted to kill Yi Wuke. Yes, that must be the case. Teacher Mustang must have come for Yi Wuke. As he thought of the deaths of Mountain and Zijun, Qin Wentian's gaze gradually sharpened. The intensity of the battle grew increasingly intense as more and more experts rushed over. The small-scale battle had already escalated into a large-scale battle. Not only that, Qin Wenyin noticed that Xiao Lan and the rest had also arrived. Xiao Lu, Wu Chong, Wang Teng, and the rest were all here. As for the people on the streets, they all hurriedly retreated further away, in case they were caught in the crossfire. Only to see Xikong Mingyue slowly standing up as he stood in the air. This undoubtedly proved that he had already broken through to Yuanfu. A terrifying killing intent erupted forth from Xikong Mingyue as he pointed his finger at Qin Wenyin. "Qin Wenyin, get the hell out here and fight me." Chapter 195. Xikong Mingyue's battle intent surged as he lunged towards the inn Qin Wenyin was in. Battle, he had to personally wash away the humiliation Qin Wenyin had given him. At the same time, he wanted to regain his confidence and untie the knot in his heart. Xiao Lan, Yi Wuke, and Xiao Lok were all staring in the direction of Qin Wenyin. Although they weren't the ones who wanted to kill Qin Wenyin back then, Qin Wentian's luck was truly too good. Even after being stabbed in the heart, he didn't die, and even reappeared after disappearing for a period of time. However, even after hearing Xikong Mingyue's arrogant words, Qin Wenyin still sat there quietly, drinking his wine, treating Xikong Mingyue as heir. "Teacher, let bygones be bygones. We should look forward to the future." Qin Wenyin could feel Mustang's gloomy mood, and he tried to persuade him. He was afraid that his teacher would be too impulsive. Mustang inclined his head and glanced at Qin Wenyin. He didn't expect that this disciple of his would be able to see through his thoughts. Smiling, he replied, "And look forward to the future. However, some debts have to be repaid." The two of them conversed as though there was no one else present. The battle in the air and on the ground didn't attract their attention at all. Even Xikong Mingyue's challenge was directly ignored. This caused Xikong Mingyue's countenance to turn unsightly. His battle intent grew stronger and stronger, and with a wave of his palms, an ancient slaughter imprint appeared, blasting towards the space above the heads of Qin Wenyin and Mustang. With a deafening boom, the roof of the inn was directly smashed into smithereens. Above Qin Wenyin and Mustang was the sky. A few silhouettes appeared beside Qin Wenyin and Mustang, floating in the air. Rain, who was clad in white, was among them. These were the Yuanfu students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Upon seeing Xiaolan and the rest staring at Qin Wenyan like tigers preying on their prey, they immediately rushed over to protect him. After the previous lesson, the Emperor's Star Academy wouldn't allow Qin Wenyan to be in a chaotic battle again. This was to prevent him from being ambushed by experts. Looks like I overestimated you. Sikong Mingyue swept his gaze across the crowd, as a calm smile appeared on his face. He wasn't angered at all. Since Qin Wenyan didn't dare to fight, there was no need for Sikong Mingyue to be angered. However, with the current situation today, even if Qin Wenyan didn't want to fight, it would be difficult for him to do so. Qin Wenyan acted as though he didn't hear Sikong Mingyue's words. In truth, when he saw Sikong Mingyue stepping out to challenge him, he didn't care about him at all. Although Sikong Mingyue was extremely powerful, with Qin Wentian's current understanding of his own strength, he should be able to deal with him easily. Hence, the current him didn't even view Sikong Mingyue as a worthy opponent. Naturally, this wasn't the reason why Qin Wenyan didn't want to fight. Even if he didn't view Sikong Mingyue as a worthy opponent, he would still be able to deal with Sikong Mingyue in passing. The reason why he didn't act was because he wanted to sit down and drink with Teacher Mustang. From the gloomy tone of Teacher Mustang's voice, Qin Wenyan couldn't help but feel a little sad. As a disciple, he wasn't doing his job well. If it wasn't for Teacher Mustang back then, how would there be the current Qin Wenyan? Teacher. Qin Wenyan didn't try to persuade Mustang any further. He continued to pour wine for Mustang, and the two of them drank mouthful after mouthful, feeling extremely satisfied. In my entire life, the thing I'm most proud of is having all of you as my disciples. Although, I didn't teach you guys much, especially you. In fact, I didn't even do what a teacher should do. Mustang placed his wine cup down, as he smiled at Qin Wenyan. After which, he slowly stood up, and his gaze abruptly turned sharp as he swept his gaze onto Yi Wuk, Wu Chong, Wang Ting as well as Xiaolan. At this moment, Mustang's gaze was incomparably sharp, as though it could penetrate through a person. An intense killing intent radiated from him. Not only did he want to kill Yi Wuk, he also wanted to kill Wu Chong, Wang Ting, and Xiaolan. If it wasn't for Xiaolan, the royal clan wouldn't have dared to fall out with the Emperor's Star Academy so quickly. However, Mustang was very clear on how difficult it was to kill Xiaolan. Not to mention his own strength, the power he represented was something that even the Emperor's Star Academy couldn't afford to offend. The Xiao faction of the Nine Mystical Palace was like a gigantic mountain pressing down on him. He knew that even if the Emperor's Star Academy dared to kill Chu Tianjiao, they wouldn't dare to be too ruthless towards Xiaolan, even if Xiaolan was here to destroy the Emperor's Star Academy. Although this was a tragedy, it was the truth. Xiaolan could only rely on himself to deal with the Emperor's Star Academy, while the Nine Mystical Palace stood in the shadows. If they killed Xiaolan, what the Emperor's Star Academy would have to face would be the wrath of the Xiao faction of the Nine Mystical Palace. Many buildings in the surroundings collapsed one after another, causing the shop owners to feel heartache. However, in the face of these two gigantic existences, they could only concede defeat. In the air above Sake Street, other than the two combatants, there were also two old men standing opposite each other. Both of them were exceedingly powerful, and just by standing there, they gave off the feeling that they were as tall as a mountain. They had always been in this area, and the royal clan was prepared to attack the Emperor's Star Academy at any moment. It was just that the Emperor's Star Academy had broken the stalemate earlier than planned. Their preparations are truly ample. Xiaolan glanced at the four old men standing in the air, as he stomped heavily on the ground. In an instant, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the surface of the inn he was in. The cracks spread out rapidly, and in an instant, rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as the inn he was in collapsed, transforming into a pile of rubble. In his eyes, killing intent could be seen. Fine, since the Emperor's Star Academy had long prepared for this battle, let's fight then. He also hoped to settle things as soon as possible. With the departure of the Azure Emperor Palace, Xiaolan gradually lost his patience. Could it be that the Emperor's Star Academy really didn't have any secrets regarding the Azure Emperor? I want Qin Wenyan alive, Kill the others without mercy. Xiao Lan calmly stated. He could faintly sense that there were some secrets hidden on the body of Qin Wenin. As the sound of Xiao Lan's voice faded, the people around him stepped out. In an instant, a dazzling display of astral souls caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. The Crown Prince of Snowcloud, Xiao Lv. This was the first time he made a move. The astral souls hovering above his head were exceptionally dazzling. They were actually zither astral souls. A melody abruptly gushed forth, and in an instant, a desolate killing intent permeated the air. This melody enveloped the people around him, as though it was able to strengthen their will to fight. Wang Teng, Wu Chong, and Xikong Mingyue all entered a mysterious state of mind. However, the only thing Qin Wendian and the rest could feel was a towering killing intent. A raging wind gusted by, as reinforcements arrived from afar. These reinforcements were none other than the alliance leader of the Heavenly Demon Alliance, Shui Lingfeng, and the alliance leader of the Azura Alliance, Du Yidao. They had been paying attention to Xiao Lv. Very quickly, both sides clashed against each other. Du Yidao has also broken through. Sensing the aura emanating from Du Yidao, Mustang could tell that he was at the third level of Yuanfu. Mustang stood up, and his astral souls erupted forth as he walked towards Yi Wuk. Yi Wuk similarly released his astral souls. Although he was arrogant, he would never underestimate his opponents. This was especially so for Mustang, who was a teacher of the Emperor's Star Academy. Although Mustang's talent couldn't be compared to his, Mustang had been at the Yuanfu realm for so many years. Not only that, Mustang's cultivation base was at the third level of Yuanfu, the same level as some of the top-tier students. The two of them instantly clashed against each other, both of them exuding a terrifying killing intent. Mustang's attacks were more experienced, while Yi Wuk's attacks were more domineering. Naturally, Yi Wuk was clearly at a disadvantage. Qin Wenyan stood there, watching the battle between Mustang and Yi Wuke. Seeing how Mustang risked his life to kill Yi Wuke, he understood his teacher's intentions. He didn't move and only stood there, watching Mustang. He didn't wish to see any mishaps befall his teacher. From afar, there were many spectators paying attention to this battle. Although they weren't the strongest, the two of them were the most famous in the royal capital. The Nine Mystical Palace, Shaolan, the Emperor's Star Academy, Qin Wenyin. Currently, the Nine Mystical Palace was no longer a secret in the royal capital. Shaolan was a member of that terrifying power. And now, Shaolan had given the order to capture Qin Wendian alive. As for the others, they were to be killed without mercy. You really have the mood to be so carefree. Xikong Mingyue had yet to act. He had an intense obsession in his heart, and this obsession was none other than Qin Wenyin. However, at this moment, a shadowy figure abruptly appeared behind Qin Wenyin. It was as though he had always been there. Evidently, he wouldn't allow the incident of Qin Wentian's death to happen again. Xikong Mingyue's gaze froze as he stared at the shadowy figure. Could it be that he really couldn't touch Qin Wenyan today? Hee. Xikong Mingyue laughed, as hints of mockery could be heard in his voice. What he didn't know was that at this moment, Qin Wenyan was looking at him with a strange look in his eyes. It was as though he was looking at someone courting death. After which, under the watchful eyes of Xikong Mingyue, Qin Wentian's silhouette slowly floated up into the air. Yuanfu. The hearts of the spectators trembled as they witnessed this scene. Qin Wendian had officially stepped into Yuanfu. His cultivation speed is truly fast. Many in the crowd sighed. If this was the case, Qin Wendian should already have the strength to contend against Xikong Mingyue. That's good. Xikong Mingyue's astral soul erupted forth. His third astral soul shone with a faint golden light. This astral soul originated from the fourth heavenly layer, and it was a demonic beast astral soul, Sword Eagle. Ranked 316 in the War Beast Index, Sword Eagle. Focuses on offense. Qin Wenyin muttered in a low voice as he stared at the demonic beast astral soul. The first and second astral souls were respectively Seven Slaughter's astral soul and Sword astral soul, both originated from the third heavenly layer. As for the third astral soul, Sword Eagle, originated from the fourth heavenly layer. No wonder Sikong Mingyue wanted to battle so badly. Such a combination of astral souls, in the entire Chu country, was truly terrifying. Seems like you're quite knowledgeable. After today's battle, I shall wash away the humiliation I suffered in the past. Sikong Mingyue drew in a deep breath. His 3 astral souls seemed as though they were about to materialize. Compared to when he was at the arterial circulation realm, the amplification effect was also much stronger. A terrifying killing intent radiated out from Sikong Mingyue's body. The terrifying sharpness of his astral souls gushed towards Qin Wenyin, and the crowd only saw a beam of light flashing past. At this moment, Sikong Mingyue's entire body was enveloped by a halo of slaughter, incomparably dazzling. In the blink of an eye, the beam of light bore down on Qin Wenyin. His body was akin to a sword as he slashed out. The pupils of the crowd involuntarily narrowed. Under this strike, would Qin Wentian's body be sliced into 2? A demonic light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. A terrifying gust of wind blew against his long hair as a blood-colored intent permeated his palms. Right now, he could easily activate the power of his bloodline. Within his body, the Yuanfu that was connected to the demon's sovereign astral soul roared, as terrifying amounts of astral energy gushed forth. The crowd only saw Qin Wenyin lifting his palms as a palm imprint blasted out, causing the faces of many to pale. Wasn't Qin Wenyin a little too arrogant? Rumble! Sikong Mingyue, who was brimming with a terrifying killing intent, slashed towards Qin Wentian's palm imprint. However, his body halted, as the gigantic palm imprint seemed to contain a boundless amount of energy, causing him to be unable to advance any further. What kind of palm was this? It was even more terrifying than a mountain. At this moment, Sikong Mingyue's countenance lost all color. He inclined his head and stared at Qin Wenyin, only to see that his opponent was still as calm as before. Other than the fact that his eyes had turned a little demonic, there weren't many fluctuations to his countenance. Only now did Sikong Mingyue understand the meaning behind Qin Wentian's indifferent gaze. It was as though he was looking at the eyes of a dead man. You are truly seeking death. Qin Wenyin calmly spat out. Sikong Mingyue's body abruptly trembled, as though he had sensed danger, as he retreated backwards. Only to see Qin Wenyin lifting his palms once again, as a terrifying surge of demonic qi could be sensed in his palms. His palms were akin to the palms of a demonic beast, as they blasted out. Kuji imprint. Given Qin Wentian's terrifying physique, as well as the explosive astral energy in his palms, how terrifying would the might of this attack be? Desolation, desolation, a true annihilation. Sikong Mingyue's palms were directly crushed apart as the palm imprint slammed into his body. After which, the spectators only saw Sikong Mingyue's body trembling weakly in the air as he slowly descended from the skies. Sikong Mingyue, one of the duo prides of Snowcloud, a demon-level genius whose 3rd astral soul originated from the 4th heavenly layer. Today, did he want to wash away the humiliation he had suffered? When the crowd saw the Kuji imprint crushing Sikong Mingyue to death, the impact they felt was indescribable. Chapter 196. In the air, Qin Wenyin quietly floated there. It was as though what he had done was an insignificant thing that wasn't even worth mentioning. The disparity between the two of them was too great. Just like back then when they were both at the 9th level of arterial circulation, Sikong Mingyue couldn't even withstand a single strike. Now it was the same. As for Qin Wenyin, he hadn't even released his astral souls yet. Many in the crowd were speculating that the astral souls Sikong Mingyue had condensed were from the 3rd heavenly layer, 3rd heavenly layer and 4th heavenly layer respectively. What about Qin Wenyin? His first 2 astral souls were condensed from the 3rd and 4th heavenly layer respectively. What about his 3rd astral soul? Yuanfu realm. That unyielding youth is finally going to welcome his era. Someone sighed in their hearts. Stepping into Yuanfu indicated that Qin Wenyin had already started his path of cultivation. From today onwards, no one in Chu would dare to underestimate this youth. At this moment, in the airspace above the Emperor Star Academy, a silhouette stood there. This person was none other than the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy, Dai. He had personally witnessed the battle, and he had also seen how easily Qin Wenyin slew Sikong Mingyue. Him at this moment only felt an incomparably complicated feeling in his heart. Turning back, he gazed at a maiden standing behind him. This maiden was clad in a pure and flawless feather robe, with a veil covering her face. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her lithe figure was enough to cause any man to go crazy. She stood there casually, yet no one dared to have any profane thoughts towards her. Dai had long since discovered the existence of such an extraordinary maiden in the Emperor's Star Academy. She had arrived together with Qin Wenyin, yet she had yet to reveal herself. After seeing her, Dai understood that the 3,000 years of waiting had finally come to an end. The mission of the generations of students had finally been accomplished. In the future, I will temporarily hand him over to you. Dai turned and spoke to the extraordinary maiden in front of him. Qing still had no expression on her face. She was as cold as ever, as though she would always be like this. Okay. Lightly nodding her head, she spoke only a single word. She was as reticent as ever, but this single word gave people a sense of security. It was as if she would definitely do what she said. Godfather. Below, Ren Qianxing's eyes were red as he looked at Dai and asked, "Do we really have to do this?" Dai slowly shifted his gaze onto Ren Qianxing below, as a gentle smile appeared in his eyes. He suddenly thought of many things in the past. He thought back to when he was young and frivolous. At that time, he obeyed the instructions of his elders and came to the Emperor's Star Academy. Back then, he had also lived a life of debauchery. Finally, he became the guardian of the Emperor's Star Academy and knew his mission. As one of the hidden branches of the Azure faction, they had never truly appeared in the Azure Emperor Palace before. Other than members of the Azure Emperor Palace, no one else knew of their existence. The mission of this branch was to either obtain the inheritance of the Azure Emperor or protect it until that person appeared. Now, he had waited for the right moment. Qianxing, the Emperor's Star Academy has nurtured too many geniuses throughout these years, standing at the pinnacle of Chu, and finally reaching this stage. Dai smiled as he looked at Ren Qianxing. This is already the best ending we could hope for. Is this really the best ending? Ren Qianxing sighed deeply. He truly couldn't bear to part with the Emperor's Star Academy. Okay, let's watch the final battle of the students of my Emperor's Star Academy. Dai smiled as he gazed into the horizons. Over there, the battle was still as intense as ever. From the initial skirmishes on the streets, it had now escalated into a true grand battle. Even Xiao Lan didn't expect this to happen. Go and deal with the person behind him. Xiao Lan spoke to an old man beside him. That old man nodded his head lightly as he walked towards the direction of Qin Wenyin. The shadowy figure behind Qin Wenyin took a step forward. Both of them moved at the same time, moving to the side. If they were to engage in a battle here, it was inevitable that the shockwaves would implicate the people on their side. This was something they didn't want to see. With that, there was no one left beside Qin Wenyin. Xiao Lu's silhouette flickered as he dashed towards the direction of Qin Wenyin. However, the leader of the Heavenly Demon Alliance, Xerox, blocked his path. The two of them clashed madly, but Xerox was suppressed by Xiao Lu, who was at the same cultivation level as him. Qin Wenyin still didn't make a move. He had been observing the battle between Mustang and Yi Wuk. Currently, Mustang had the upper hand and was unleashing a frenzied barrage of attacks against Yi Wuk. Yi Wuk retreated step by step, his countenance extremely unsightly to behold. Mustang wanted to fight to the death with him, and each of his attacks were extremely ruthless, disregarding his own safety in order to kill Yi Wuk. At this moment, a cold glint of light flashed in Yi Wuk's eyes as his killing intent gushed forth. Mustang's palm strike was even more terrifying than a sharp sword, blasting towards the location of Yi Wuk's heart. At this moment, Yi Wuk didn't dodge. He allowed Mustang's attack to land on his body. Cracking sounds rang out as Yi Wuk's robes were shredded into pieces. The palm imprint directly slammed into the location of his heart, but the terrifying force of the palm strike was unable to penetrate into his body. This was because Yi Wuk was wearing a divine armor that the Yi clan had paid a hefty price to forge for him. This was a third-ranked divine armor that was able to greatly weaken the power of attacks. Die! Yi Wuk roared in rage as he slashed out with his sword, aiming for Mustang's head. However, how experienced was Mustang? At the instant he blasted out his attack, he waved his palms, causing a raging gale to kick up as a row of palm imprints appeared in front of him. Yi Wuk's sword strike pierced right into the palm imprints, yet it only managed to penetrate into Mustang's body, forcing him to retreat backwards. But at the same time, Yi Ran, who was standing at the side, was already prepared. At the instant Mustang was forced back, Yi Ran had already made his preparations. Mustang's countenance turned ashen as he hurriedly slashed out with his palms. A beam of cold light flashed past, but the raging flames still blasted into his body, causing him to groan in agony. Die! Yi Wuk stabbed out with a finger as a five-colored sword light shot out, wanting to lacerate Mustang's head. However, at this moment, a terrifying palm imprint blasted out from behind Mustang. The Kuji imprint gushed forth with a frenzied speed, engulfing the sword light as it lunged towards Yi Wuk, causing Yi Wuk's countenance to sink as he retreated backwards. Qin Wentian. Yi Wuk's eyes flashed with a cold light when he saw that the person who attacked was Qin Wenin. How tenacious! Not far away, Xiaolan smiled as he stared at Qin Wenian. After which, he stepped out, like a gentle breeze, moving towards Qin Wenian. Qin Wenin abruptly felt a sense of danger. He glanced at Xiaolan, and abruptly he felt a bolt of lightning blasting into his mind, causing Qin Wenian to close his eyes. Careful! Mustang shouted. Qin Wenian similarly felt the sense of danger. Gathering his strength, the blood-colored inscriptions around him surged as demonic qi gushed forth from him. His palms blasted out in a frenzy, exuding an indomitable aura. Xiaolan's attack arrived as well, akin to 1,000,000 bolts of lightning. Qin Wenin groaned in agony as he felt a destructive force gushing into his body, gushing towards his sea of consciousness. Qin Wentian retreated explosively. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Xiaolan calmly looking at him. His countenance was filled with coldness, as though he was unexcelled in the world. Xiaolan, a genius from the 9 mystical palace with a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Yuanfu, was able to easily suppress Shuelingfeng, who was at the 3rd level of Yuanfu from the Emperor's Star Academy. From this, one could see how tyrannical his combat prowess was. Ordinary cultivators at the 3rd level of Yuanfu wouldn't be able to compare to him. His hasty actions naturally caused Qin Wenin to be completely suppressed, and he only suffered light injuries. I thought that after you fled, you would never appear again. Who would have thought that you would return by yourself? Do you really think that I wouldn't dare to kill you? Xiaolan coldly spoke, his robes fluttering in the wind. Many experts gathered around Qin Wentian, as well as experts from the 9 mystical palace. You want to kill him? At this moment, a voice drifted over. The crowd inclined their heads, only to see a few silhouettes walking over from the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy. The person in the lead was none other than the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy, Dai. Dai's gaze shifted downwards, locking gazes with Xiaolan as he indifferently stated, "When will you be able to kill him?" Xiaolan furrowed his brows, as a cold light flickered in his eyes. There was actually someone in the Emperor's Star Academy who dared to speak to him in such a manner? As long as I'm willing, I can kill him anytime. Based on his strength, how can he resist? Xiaolan's gaze sharpened as he arrogantly stated. Are you saying that with your cultivation base at the 3rd level of Yuanfu, you want him, who's only at the 1st level of Yuanfu, to fight you one-on-one? The people from the Emperor's Star Academy won't interfere? Dai coldly stated. Even if you want to interfere, if I want to kill him, do you think the Emperor's Star Academy can stop me? Xiaolan stared at Dai as arrogant as ever. In Chu, no matter what Xiaolan wanted to do, would there be anyone who could stop him? He had already planned to make the Emperor's Star Academy submit, let alone a mere Qin Wenin. Is that so? Dai's countenance was as calm as ever. Nobody knew what he was thinking, and in fact, there were only a few who recognized him. Then let me tell you right now. If you dare to take another step forward, Xiaolan will no longer exist in the 9 mystical palace. Dai calmly stated. As the sound of his voice faded, the entire space abruptly turned silent. Countless people inclined their heads, staring at Dai before shifting their gazes onto Xiaolan. Dai had said that as long as Xiaolan took another step forward, he would die. Xiaolan also stared at Dai. Since Dai knew his identity, why did he still dare to speak such arrogant words? Threats, he, Xiaolan, was actually being threatened in this tiny Chu country. If he took a step forward, would he? What if his opponent was a heavenly Dipper sovereign? As the sound of Dai's voice faded, the arrogance in Xiaolan's heart wavered. After all, this place wasn't the 9 mystical palace. This was the Chu country, outside of the Emperor Star Academy. If he died, even if the 9 mystical palace destroyed the Emperor Star Academy, so what? Weren't you very arrogant? Why aren't you saying anything? Dai calmly continued. At this moment, the battles had all ceased. Everyone was seriously scrutinizing Dai, a Dai that no one had ever seen before. Maybe Luo Qianxiu had seen him before in the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Not far behind Dai, a veiled maiden casually stood in the air, resembling a celestial maiden. This caused the crowd to speculate who was she. Chapter 197. Silence. At this moment, the entire space was deathly silent. Dai simply stood there, staring disdainfully at Xiaolan. Xiaolan similarly stared at Dai, yet he didn't dare to take a single step forward. An old man walked out, but he didn't walk towards Dai. Instead, he walked towards Qin Wenyan. At this moment, the aura exuding from him caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. The aura exuded by this old man was clearly at the upper 3rd level of Yuanfu. Qin Wenyan stared at the old man walking towards him, yet he didn't move a single step. Today, when Fan Lu invited him over to watch the show, he didn't expect that this would be a battle between the Emperor Star Academy and the Royal Clan. Naturally, the Royal Clan was backed by Xiaolan and the 9 mystical palace. Since Teacher Mustang allowed him to come out, he believed in the Emperor Star Academy. Hence, he merely stood there calmly. The silhouette of the old man whistled through the air towards Qin Wenyan, as a terrifying killing intent gushed forth from him. However, at the same time, he was wary of Dai, who was standing in the air. Dai's palms trembled, and in an instant, the crowd saw a gigantic palm descending from the skies, smashing downwards at a speed so fast that the eyes of the spectators couldn't even follow it. The old man abruptly inclined his head, as a powerful tempest erupted forth. However, that terrifying palm directly slammed into his body. That palm abruptly clenched into a fist, and instantly, the body of the old man was caught in the grasp of the golden palm, unable to escape. The old man struggled madly, as an expression of terror could be seen in his eyes. At this moment, he was no longer a fearsome expert, but a pitiful old man, trapped in the grasp of that golden palm, waiting to be slaughtered. In the air, Dai's palm also stretched out, as though he was in the exact same posture as the golden palm below. Reckless fool. Dai faintly spoke, as he abruptly clenched his fist. The golden palm similarly tightened, and a cracking sound rang out as the silhouette of the old man vanished from sight. The golden palm opened up, and only drops of fresh blood could be seen within it. It had been directly crushed into pieces, drifting with the wind. A powerful Yuanfu cultivator, in front of Dai, was like an ant easily slaughtered. This had a huge impact on everyone. Was this the legendary Heavenly Dipper realm expert? His strength was too shocking. How powerful! Qin Wenyan's heart trembled as well. Was that gigantic palm made of golden constellations and astral nova? Even in his wildest dreams, Qin Wenyan would have never imagined that the old man in slumber atop the staircase of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, whose entire body was covered in dust, would actually be so powerful. Not only that, back then when he faced Yu Han, he was extremely low profile. From Qin Wenyan's point of view, it wasn't that he didn't have the strength. It was just that he had been restraining himself. As for why he had been restraining himself, Qin Wenyan didn't know. He definitely wouldn't think that it was because of him. Xiaolan's heart also felt an intense impact. To think that there was actually such a powerful expert in the Emperor Star Academy of Chu. Qin Wenyan stared at Dai, forcing himself to remain calm as he continued, "Do you really have no qualms about dealing with people from the 9 mystical palace like this? One more word and you'll die." Dai stared at Xiaolan as he spat out another sentence, causing Xiaolan's countenance to stiffen as his countenance contorted. Earlier, Dai forbade him from taking a single step forward. And now, Dai forbade him from speaking again. If not, he would die. Xiaolan had never suffered such humiliation before. However, at this moment, he could only endure it. The hands of the 9 mystical palace have stretched too far. Do you really think that the Emperor Star Academy can be bullied as you wish? Dai's palms trembled as his terrifying astral nova transformed into a golden bolt of lightning, shooting towards another old man. This old man was also one of the strongest experts here. That old man's countenance drastically changed as he frenziedly circulated his energy. However, when the astral nova slammed into him, he had no way to resist at all. His body dissipated into nothingness, vanishing from the face of the heavens and earth. However, Dai did not stop there. The golden lightning continued to dance in the void, and with a few terrifying tremors, another 2 terrifying figures fell. Silence filled the air. Not a single person dared to make a single move. This was especially so for those from the Royal Academy. They didn't expect that the situation today would be like this. As long as Dai willed it, he could kill all of them. That golden palm floated in the air. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Xiaolan's heart was filled with rage, yet he still kept his mouth shut, not daring to utter a single word. Bizizi. The golden palm whistled through the air, grabbing hold of Xiaolan's body. In that instant, Xiaolan's heart pounded violently as an expression of terror appeared on his face. He had personally witnessed Dai killing without batting an eyelid. He was truly afraid. The hearts of everyone present tensed up. That golden palm lifted Xiaolan up in the air, yet Dai's countenance didn't change in the slightest. He spoke to Xiaolan, "If you leave the 9 mystical palace, you won't even know how you died. Yet you still dare to flaunt your arrogance here? If you truly have the ability, you shouldn't be flaunting it in the Chu country. Today, I will temporarily spare your life. However, if you dare to do anything that infuriates me again in the future, I can guarantee that unless you never appear in the 9 continents again, you will never be able to eat or sleep in peace." As the sound of Dai's voice faded, the golden palm abruptly smashed out, instantly flinging Xiaolan through the air. "Scram from Chu." A cold voice rang out in Xiaolan's mind. His body flipped several times in the air before he stabilized himself. Right now, Xiaolan's countenance was ashen. The humiliation he felt was so great that he wanted to go crazy. But right now, he could only endure it. Emperor Star Academy. Xiaolan's eyes flickered with the flames of hatred. In the end, he didn't dare to turn his head back. Bringing along with him boundless humiliation, he departed. Dai's gaze then shifted onto the others. Those from the royal clan as well as those from the Royal Academy. At this moment, all of them were trembling with fear in their hearts. As long as Dai willed it, all of them would die. "All of you scram." Dai calmly spoke, causing those from the royal clan to feel as though they had just been pardoned. They transformed into wisps of smoke and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. In the end, I still decided to spare them. Mustang clenched his fists as he sighed. Inclining his head, he stared at Dai in the air as he asked, "Headmaster, why didn't you kill them?" In Mustang's tone, traces of anger could be heard. "I hope that all of you will be able to live on peacefully." Dai glanced at Mustang, his words causing Mustang's countenance to stiffen. After which, he drew in a deep breath and bowed to Dai. "Mustang knows his mistake. Don't worry, there's always been an old monster in the royal clan. Let's return to the academy." Dai faintly spoke. The others in Chu might not be clear, but he had lived for so many years, and had stayed in the royal capital for so many years. Although only a few people knew of him, With regards to every single blade of grass and every tree in the royal capital, no one was clearer than Dai. Who were the strongest in the royal capital? Dai was clearer than anyone else. He had always known that there was an old monster in the royal clan who had been in closed-door seclusion for many years. If he really went on a killing spree, nothing would happen to him. But what about those from the Emperor Star Academy? Those from the Emperor Star Academy gradually returned. The weaker students also gathered together as they stared at the legendary figure in the air. This was their headmaster. With a wave of his hand, he could slaughter the entire world. How imposing was that? Dai gazed at the crowd below, as a gentle smile appeared on his face. After watching over the academy for so many years, his feelings towards it were no weaker than anyone else's. However, today he had no choice but to make a decision. The Emperor Star Academy has a history of over 3,000 years and has experienced too many trials and tribulations. However, in these 3,000 years, the Emperor Star Academy has always stood at the peak of the Chu country. I'm extremely proud of our achievements. Dai calmly spoke. Silence filled the air, as everyone quietly listened to his words. However, today, I have no choice but to make an important decision. From today onwards, the Emperor Star Academy will be disbanded. What? Why? As the sound of Dai's voice faded, the countenances of the crowd changed. Bewilderment, and bewilderment could be seen on their faces. Disbanding? But only to see Dai waving his hands as the commotion gradually died down. Dai continued, I know that all of you are reluctant to part with the Emperor Star Academy. However, given the current situation, the Emperor Star Academy is no longer suitable to exist in Chu. Disbanding the Emperor Star Academy is a decision I've made after careful consideration. However, don't be disheartened. All of you have outstanding talent, which is why you are able to stand here today. The outside world is vast, and there are countless powers stronger than the Emperor Star Academy. Qin Wenin calmly listened to Dai's words, an indescribable feeling in his heart. Beside him, Mustang, Luo Huan and Fan Lu were all present. Teacher, did you already know about this? Qin Wenin murmured as he sighed. Headmaster Dai did this in order to protect the students. If this continued, the unlucky ones would be the students. They would bleed to death, and in addition, the headmaster had no choice but to kill those from the 9 Mystical Palace to intimidate the Emperor Star Academy. Mustang sighed. Dai had killed several experts from the 9 Mystical Palace. There was no need for Xiaolon to act. The 9 Mystical Palace had too many methods to deal with the students of the Emperor Star Academy. As for the reason why Dai spared Xiaolon, it was because he knew that once Xiaolon died, even if the Emperor Star Academy was disbanded, the Xiao faction of the 9 Mystical Palace would still be able to find those who were disbanded. As long as Xiaolon didn't die, the 9 Mystical Palace wouldn't dare to be too ruthless. Dai's actions were obviously done after careful consideration. In fact, he had other considerations as well. Because of the secret of the Azure Emperor, Dai knew that there were many pairs of eyes staring at the Emperor Star Academy. Under such circumstances, disbanding the Emperor Star Academy was a helpless move. Naturally, the reason why Dai stood out today and made such a decision was all because of Qin Wenin. He had already ended the mission of the Emperor Star Academy. All of you will have a better future. Children, take care of yourselves. Dai laughed. After which, he slowly walked towards the back mountain of the Emperor Star Academy, leaving behind the students of the Emperor Star Academy who were still in a daze. Qin Wenin drew in a deep breath as he stared at the departing figure of Dai. His eyes flashed with sharpness as he stated, I'm not willing to let the Emperor Star Academy disappear just like that. Outside the royal capital of Chu, Xiaolon was riding on a demonic beast. He was truly preparing to leave. He no longer had the face to remain in this place of humiliation. In the heart of Xiaolon, there was also an intense unwillingness. Beside him, there were several experts protecting him. They didn't dare to speak for fear of angering Xiaolon. At this moment, the countenance of one of the guards froze. However, as the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying silhouette flickered past, and with a light sound, the guard's head instantly exploded. In an instant, the other guards frenziedly unleashed their auras. However, as the sounds of explosions rang out unceasingly, the guards fell one after another. Xiao Lan's body trembled slightly. Staring at the silhouette before him, his countenance turned ashen. "What do you want to do?" "Kill you," that person calmly replied. Xiao Lan's eyes flickered with despair as he instantly turned and fled. He only had a single thought in his mind, and that was to flee. Even if he knew that he was in the hands of his opponent, there was no way for him to escape. Indeed, a gigantic palm slammed over. Xiao Lan's eyes were filled with despair and terror as his body was crushed into pieces. His head fell from the air. Before Xiao Lan died, there was only a single thought in his mind. No one would know who killed him. Xiao Lan, he hated him. Chapter 198. The news of the disbandment of the Emperor Star Academy quickly spread throughout the royal capital, causing a huge wave of commotion. The academy that stood at the peak of Chu for 3,000 years was actually disbanded. This caused many to feel a sense of desolation, as they silently sighed for the Emperor Star Academy. Everyone also understood that the disbandment of the Emperor Star Academy was something they had no choice but to do. With the royal clan suppressing them, and with the backing of the 9 Mystical Palace, the headmaster of the Emperor Star Academy, Dai's domineering attitude, killing the experts of the 9 Mystical Palace would definitely infuriate them. Hence, the Emperor Star Academy had no choice but to disband. At this moment, within the Emperor Star Academy, countless people bid their farewells to each other, their expressions filled with sorrow. Qin Wenin stood on top of a pavilion, gazing at the silhouettes in the distance as he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. "But, are you feeling sad?" Luo Huan walked to Qin Wentian's side, her beautiful eyes gazing into the distance as a faint smile hung on her lips. However, there was a hint of helplessness hidden within. "Sister Luo Huan, what are your plans?" Qin Wenin turned his head to look at her beautiful face as he squeezed out a smile. "Let's go. I plan to go to the Qin continent. I heard that the 9 Mystical Palace is located there. I really want to see how powerful they are." Luo Huan smiled. "What about you? Where do you plan to go? Do you want to come with me?" "No thanks, I still have some unfinished business," Qin Wendian replied in a low voice. Luo Huan contemplated Qin Wendian, only to see that Qin Wentian's eyes were clear and deep. She couldn't tell what he was thinking. This fellow had truly grown up. Luo Huan walked forward, stretching out her hands to embrace Qin Wendian, causing Qin Wendian to be stunned. Her beautiful eyes were inches away from his, and her ample bosom pressed against his chest, causing Qin Wentian's face to heat up. "Little fellow, you even know how to be shy." Luo Huan giggled as she planted a kiss on Qin Wentian's forehead. "Sister, don't you know how charming you are?" Qin Wendian bitterly smiled. Luo Huan giggled. After which, she separated herself from Qin Wendian and said, "Little fellow, this elder sister has watched you grow up. In the future, you must definitely become a man of indomitable spirit." "Definitely." Qin Wendian heavily nodded his head. The situation of the Emperor Star Academy being disbanded was something he never wanted to see ever again. "Enough, the two of you can stop being so intimate. Old Ren is waiting for you, Wendian." Mustang walked to the back of the two as he smiled. "Teacher, I'm trying to build a good relationship with junior brother Qin. If not, in the future, this fellow might not even acknowledge me as his senior sister." Luo Huan laughed. "You're full of wicked ideas." Mustang glared at Luo Huan. However, he was extremely happy in his heart. After Mountain's death, his closest disciples, Qin Wendian and Luo Huan, were undoubtedly two of them. There was also Yu Fei and Fan Lu. He hoped that all of them would be fine. However, Yu Wuke, Wu Chong, Wang Teng and the rest were still alive. Mustang was extremely unwilling in his heart. He had yet to avenge Big Mountain. Qin Wendian followed Ren Qianxing to the temporary residence in the mountain and met with Dai. Dai had a smile on his face as he indicated to Qin Wenyin, "Take a seat." Qin Wenyin nodded his head as he sat opposite Dai. He cast a glance at Ren Qianxing before Ren Qianxing departed. On this mountain peak that overlooked the entire Emperor Star Academy, only Dai and Qin Wenyin remained. There are many innate techniques and cultivation arts in the Heavenly Star Pavilion. I've already instructed the teachers of the Academy to copy them down and distribute them to the disciples. Here are a few innate techniques, the original versions, for you to cultivate in the future. As for the cultivation arts, I won't be giving them to you. You can go and find one that suits you. Dai retrieved a few innate techniques and passed them to Qin Wenyin. His gaze when he looked at Qin Wenyin was filled with kindness. "Thank you, headmaster." Qin Wenyin didn't stand on ceremony and accepted them. Indeed, he hadn't had the time to go to the 6th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion to cultivate a high-grade Earth-ranked innate technique. "How many yuan fu do you have now?" Dai stared at Qin Wenyin as a hint of hope flashed in his eyes. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened as a strange light flashed in his eyes. So it turned out that Dai already knew about it. 3 yuan fu. Qin Wentian replied. Momentarily, Dai drew in a deep breath as he heavily patted Qin Wenyin on his shoulders. Good. The Azure Emperor finally has a successor. Senior, have you always been guarding the Emperor Star Academy? Qin Wenyin curiously asked. Ensham. Dai nodded his head as he turned to Qin Wenyin. You should already know about the Azure Emperor Palace. Back then, after the Azure Emperor died, the Azure Emperor Palace was invaded by external powers, wanting to obtain everything belonging to the Azure Emperor. The Azure faction had no choice but to endure, and at the same time, they secretly sent out a group of infants. Now that a few thousand years have passed, the invading external powers have already become the representatives of the Azure Emperor Palace, while the Azure faction was completely suppressed. But luckily our ancestor had foresight. After those infants grew up, they continued to multiply, becoming one of the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor Palace. Before this, no one knew of their existence until a few years ago. The reason for this was because of the conflict between the Emperor Star Academy and the 9 Mystical Palace caused by Luo Tianya. Senior, are you saying that the one who acted back then was one of the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor Palace? Qin Wenyin was somewhat taken aback. At that time, I was still guarding the Heavenly Star Pavilion. As long as the inheritance of the Azure Emperor hasn't been obtained by others, I didn't want to be exposed. But in the end, the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor Palace also found out about it. Luckily, they didn't know too much. Dai laughed. Actually, all these years, the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor Palace have always had people cultivating in the Emperor Star Academy, just like me. It's just that no one knew about it. However, none of them managed to pass the test, and in the end, the inheritance landed in your hands. An expression of bewilderment appeared on Qin Wentian's face. Only now did he understand some of the hidden details. Dai retrieved a medallion with the word Azure engraved on it. He then passed it to Qin Wenyin. Although this medallion is under my control, I don't have the authority to use it. But now, I finally have a successor. As Dai spoke, he grabbed hold of Qin Wentian's hand and sliced it with his finger. Instantly, a drop of fresh blood dripped from Qin Wentian's fingertip. Dai placed the medallion on the ground, and as the drop of blood dripped onto the medallion, Qin Wenyin discovered, to his astonishment, that in the airspace above the medallion, a map could be seen. From now onwards, this medallion is yours. These maps indicate the location of the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor. I hope that you will be able to bring them back to the Azure Emperor Palace and become the successor of the Azure Emperor Palace. You will no longer have to fear the covetous eyes of the other powers in the 9 continents. Dai solemnly passed the medallion to Qin Wenyin, causing great waves to rise in Qin Wentian's heart. How strong is this hidden faction? Qin Wenyin asked. Dai laughed. I'm not too sure, but at the very least, it should be much stronger than the Shao faction of the 9 Mystical Palace. But you have to remember, the hidden faction of the Azure Emperor has to keep a low profile. Back then, there were too many transcendent powers that participated in the assassination of the Azure Emperor, and the majority of them were transcendent powers in the 9 continents. They wouldn't be willing to see the Azure Emperor Palace rise up again. Qin Wenyan solemnly noted this down. And one more thing, you are not a direct descendant of the Azure Emperor. If you want to completely control this faction, you still have a long way to go. Dai patted Qin Wenyan on his shoulder, causing Qin Wenyan to be slightly taken aback. That's right, with his current strength, it wouldn't be easy for him to make those heavenly dipper sovereigns listen to his commands. But you can rest assured that even if you can't control them, at the very least, they won't act against you. They will only watch you grow until they approve of you. I will do my best. Qin Wenyan calmed his fluctuating heart as a carefree smile appeared on his face. No one would be able to remain calm in the face of such a situation. The hidden faction of the Azure Emperor Palace would be under his control. Naturally, for this, he would have to shoulder the responsibility of reviving the Azure Emperor Palace. I heard that you and that lass from the Mo clan are in love with each other. This lass has an extraordinary talent in the area of medicinal pills and spiritual herbs, it's just that she has yet to be excavated in Chu. Before I leave, do you want me to be your matchmaker? Dai laughed, causing an expression of awkwardness to appear on Qin Wenyan's face. It's still too early. Qin Wenyan smiled, his voice trembling. Hi, you're right. In that case, I won't interfere in the matters of you youngsters. Dai laughed, glancing at a beautiful silhouette not far away from him. She simply stood there, as though she didn't exist at all. This caused Dai to not remind Qin Wenyan to take care of himself. He knew that Fairy Qingmei had already made her preparations. Qin Wenyan also felt that something was strange. He naturally discovered that the beautiful maiden had appeared beside him. However, she didn't say a single word to him, causing him to be somewhat speechless. The disbandment of the Emperor Star Academy caused the royal clan of Chu to be secretly delighted. Although they were shocked by Dai, the Emperor Star Academy no longer existed from now on. The royal clan no longer had a power that had been suppressing them for 3,000 years. Not only that, in recent days, because of Qin Wenyan, the Emperor Star Academy had already become enemies with the royal clan. The students of the Emperor Star Academy gradually departed, and the royal clan didn't interfere. They were happy to see such a situation unfold. But also today, outside the Yi clan, a power of the royal clan, there was a life and death letter pasted on the door, challenging Yi Wukei of the Yi clan. The location of the Junlin banquet was the Chu gazing platform, and the person who signed it was none other than Qin Wenyan. This news quickly spread throughout the royal capital. Dai's appearance caused him to attract too much attention. It was as though many people had forgotten that the top ranker of the Junlin banquet had already stepped into Yuanfu. Not only that, he had also killed Sikong Mingyue in an extremely tyrannical manner. And now, the most dazzling figure of the Junlin banquet had jumped levels to challenge Yi Wuk, who had already broken through to the 2nd level of Yuanfu. Such news undoubtedly caused people to be filled with excitement. Exactly how strong was Qin Wenyan after he stepped into Yuanfu? The words life and death battle caused everyone in the royal capital to feel the intense self-confidence radiating from Qin Wenyan. However, this wasn't the end. Following that, another piece of news circulated out. The 2 geniuses of the Royal Academy, Wang Teng and Wu Chong, had both received a life and death battle letter, and the challenger was none other than Qin Wenyan. Yi Wuk, Wu Chong, and Wang Teng were all at the 2nd level of Yuanfu. Back then, they had accompanied Xiao Lan to the Emperor Star Academy to challenge cultivators at the 5th level of Yuanfu. The 3 of them had all defeated their opponents. Back then, their opponents were Qiu Mo, the leader of the Azura Alliance, Du Yidao, and the leader of the Green Cloud Alliance, Ling Hua. After the Junlin banquet, the Chu Emperor District once again attracted the attention of the royal capital. Could that unyielding youth still be as dazzling as he was during the Junlin banquet? Could he continue to trample over those geniuses? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.